Chapter 694. Hurt someone? Fang Yu shook his head. Looking at the fourth young master's aura, Fang Yu could clearly sense it. This guy was not going to hurt anyone. He was going to kill someone. Rumble! As expected, when Fang Yu sneered, the fourth young master had already succeeded in the arena. His fists gathered surging power and directly bombarded the burly man's chest. That was a vital spot. Moreover, it was obvious that he did not hold back and attacked with all his strength. The burly man's expression changed, but he reacted quickly. However, when he reacted and tried to block the attack with his fists, he realized that his hands were already broken. He could not muster any strength at all. While he was shocked, the fourth young master's violent iron fist had already bombarded the burly man's chest. Crack! The crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. The burly man's chest caved in. In the next second, his burly figure flew out of the arena. When he fell to the ground, a mist of blood spewed out of his mouth. When the crowd reacted, the burly man had already stopped breathing. Rip! This guy is dead. The fourth young master killed someone. Didn't they say that it was only a martial arts competition and that the fight would end? The crowd was already in an uproar. They surrounded the body of the burly man. His eyes were wide open and seemed to be filled with horror. The fourth young master was too cruel. Nonsense. On the high platform, Lu Xing roared and slammed the table. This was the Lu family. This arena was also set up by the Lu family. Moreover, Lu Xing was the one who had personally set the rules of fighting in the arena. Now, the fourth young master had actually killed someone. What was this? Moreover, there were so many people watching. If they spread the news that the Lu family's young master killed someone in a martial arts competition, the Lu family would lose face in the future. Family head, please calm down. Just as Lu Xing was about to walk down the high platform in a rage, an elder had already stopped him. Family head, nothing is absolute. In the arena, although it was said that one should not overdo it, they were all martial artists. Furthermore, when they exchanged blows, it was inevitable that they would make mistakes. Moreover, the fourth young master had already made the burly man surrender. It was just that the burly man was arrogant and haughty, and refused to surrender. That was why the fourth young master accidentally killed him. Fourth young master couldn't be blamed for this. The one who spoke was the second elder. This guy should be the fourth young master's master. It could be seen that his eyes were cold, and his words were gloomy as well. The fourth young master's viciousness should have been learned from him. Fine. Hearing the second elder's words, Lu Xing breathed a sigh of relief. Pass down the order to bury this person. Compensate him as much as you should. Don't lose face. Also, tell him to get down here and stop hitting him. Lu Xing snorted coldly with anger in his eyes. Fourth brother, why are you doing this? Beneath the arena, Fatso Lu became anxious as he faced the crowd that was in an uproar. Doing so would undoubtedly tarnish the reputation of the Lu clan. Everyone, I gave him a chance to surrender. But he refused to do so. Why? If he doesn't surrender in this arena, I can only persuade him with my mouth and can't do anything? As you can see, he's not strong enough. I didn't kill him. In the arena, the fourth young master was still refuting eloquently. He directly ignored Fatso Lu and the fifth elder, who looked embarrassed. Then, as if the world wasn't chaotic enough, he said to the people below the arena, if you want to challenge him, you'd better take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror. Don't embarrass yourself if you're not strong enough. That's right. This guy was obviously arrogant and conceited. That's why the fourth young master accidentally killed him. That's right. The fourth young master had already shown mercy. He refused to surrender. How can you blame the fourth young master? Below the arena, many of the fourth young master's followers began to speak. Their words were full of the burly man's fault. They didn't mention the fourth young master's fault at all. For a moment, Those who wanted to stand up for the burly man all shut up. In fact, the fourth young master did give him a chance to surrender, but the burly man refused. Moreover, the fourth young master was a member of the Liu family. If the burly man was killed, then so be it. Who could hold him accountable for it? All right, is there anyone else who wants to challenge me? The fourth young master saw that many people below the arena were speaking up for him and couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. He turned around and looked at the crowd below the arena. For a moment, no one dared to speak. After all, the burly man's body was still placed under the arena. It was still warm even now. With his example, who would dare to follow in his footsteps? Even if the reward was 10,000 crystals, without absolute confidence, no one dared to challenge the arena. This was already different from the previous years. Even if they lost, they would only lose 1 crystal. This time, they might lose their lives if they didn't do it well. Moreover, the Liu family was rich and overbearing. In this Mirage Sea City, no one would dare to pursue the matter if they killed them. However, it was different for them. If they were to kill and hurt one of these young masters, they might not be able to bear the consequences. Thinking of this, the entire arena suddenly quieted down. Many people had already left this side of the square. It was obvious that there was no more excitement to watch. Is there anyone else who wants to challenge me? Just now was just an accident. I promise that such things won't happen again. In the arena, the fifth elder was still trying his best to control the situation. However, at this time, no one would dare to challenge him even if he said it out loud. This was also according to Lu Xing's intention to give this group of people a warning and let them know that the Liu family's fourth young master was a ruthless character and not to be trifled with. The scene calmed down for a while. Even if there were still a large number of people in the square who had not dispersed, at this moment, it was silent. Fang Yu knew that in this world, there was no one who was truly unafraid of death. All right, at this point, who else dares to challenge me? Everyone, get ready to go to Yuan Mountain for the trial. On the high platform, Lu Xing coldly snorted. He frowned. He seemed to be thinking about something in his heart. This matter must have something to do with the fourth young master. All right then. In that case, everyone, disperse. The fifth elder glanced at the square and saw that no one wanted to challenge him. In the end, he could only helplessly shake his head. This time, the arena competition ended in such a tragic way. However, the Liu family's trial did not end here. Skipping this round of the competition, they directly went to the next round. That was the trial of Yuan Mountain. Looking for the beast bones. Hearing this sentence, many people were already excited. The fourth young master's action had saved the others from a big battle. Chapter 695. In fact, the rest of the trial had nothing to do with them. After all, with the help of the elders, the beast bones would be a piece of cake. It had nothing to do with them. Fatso Lu, on the other hand, was starting to feel a little disappointed. Although he was very confident in Fang Yu could only help him this time. He could not help him with anything else. While he was still hesitating, Lu Xing had already walked down from the high platform. Several elders followed Lu Xing down the stairs. The rest of the young masters, except for the injured sixth young master, were all waiting excitedly. Lu Xing walked slowly to them. When he glanced at the fourth young master's face, he was a little gloomy. Without stopping for too long, he said in a deep voice, "Are you all ready?" "No problem." They answered at the same time. "That's good." Lu Xing nodded and said, "It's the same as the previous years. For your safety, the elders will follow behind you and take action when necessary." After saying that, he sighed and continued, "But I hope you know, the reason why I asked the elders to follow you is to ensure your safety as a last resort. I did not ask them to help you complete the trial." At this point, his face was already clouded. He then snorted coldly, "Don't think I don't know. Over the years, you have asked the elders to help you get the beast bones. In fact, you have done nothing. The elders are only responsible for your safety, not helping you complete the trial. Do you understand? His voice was very loud when he said the last sentence. It was not only directed at the young masters, but also to remind the elders behind them. As soon as he said that, everyone lowered their heads in silence. The truth was the same as what he said. Over the years, the elders had helped them complete the trial. They had not done anything at all. They had thought that Lu Xing would not know about this unspoken rule. However, it seemed that he was well aware of it. The young masters, including the elders, were all surprised. In the end, they all murmured and nodded, not daring to refute. "If you are ready," Lu Xing snorted coldly. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed Fatty Lu, who was alone. Then, he suddenly remembered something. The 6th elder and the 7th elder are no longer here. I can't let you go alone. How about this, I'll go with you. Lu Xing's words carried a hint of authority, but when he mentioned the 6th elder and the 7th elder, he sighed in his heart. He was not that serious when talking to Fatso Lu. You can't, Patriarch. That Mount Yuan is incomparably dangerous. How can you go there personally? That's right. Eldest young master, please don't participate. However, as soon as Lu Xing's words left his mouth, he was immediately opposed by a few elders. They shook their heads. Although he knew that Lu Xing was more partial to Fatso Lu, he didn't expect that he would personally accompany Fatso Lu. That's right, father. That Mount Yuan is too dangerous. If there's really no other way, let Big Brother come with me. With the first elder's protection, nothing will happen. Yeah, as soon as the elders finished speaking, the remaining young masters also spoke up. Of course, they weren't worried about Fatso Lu's safety. It was jealousy in their hearts. To put it bluntly, they had never received such treatment from Fatso Lu in all these years. How can that be? Lu Xing shook his head and refused. If there's really danger, with the elder's strength, it's still possible to protect one person, but it's still a little difficult to protect two people. Let me go. Lu Xing's attitude was very firm. There was an undeniable tone in his voice. Judging from his tone, it seemed that he was determined to accompany Fatso Lu. For a moment, the few of them didn't speak. While they were jealous of Fatso Lu, they were also somewhat resentful. However, at this moment, Fatso Lu shook his head. Father, what they said makes sense. Mount Yuan is too dangerous. It's better that you don't go, Fatso Lu said with a bitter smile. There was a hint of helplessness on his face. How can that be? Lu Xing shook his head directly. There's no one to protect you. If something happens, I've already found a good candidate. Just as Lu Xing was about to say something, Fatso Lu had already interrupted him. He smiled and pointed at Feng Yu, who was still sitting on the high platform. He said, Master has already agreed to accompany me. Lu Xing frowned and turned to look at Feng Yu. He was still a little worried. This master is good at refining pills. But his strength is definitely not a problem. Fatso Lu interrupted Lu Xing again and continued, Master is an expert. Although his cultivation level is not high, his strength is definitely not to be underestimated. Don't forget that when our Lu family was in trouble last time, he was the one who settled it. If that's the case, all right. Fatso Lu's words were very firm, not giving Lu Xing a chance to refute. Lu Xing could only nod and agree. After thinking about it carefully, he had not seen Feng Yu's strength before. However, to be able to deal with two martial royal stage powerhouses on his own, his strength must be very strong. Moreover, to be able to refine a supreme-grade pill, it meant that he had a great master. There was no doubt about his true strength. After thinking for a while, he looked at the elders behind him. Although Master is not a member of our Lu family, there's no rule that says that non-members of the Lu family can't participate. Let him protect boss. Do you have any objections? No objections. The few of them shook their heads at the same time. The tone of Lu Xing's words was very obvious. Everyone knew that he was on Fatso Lu's side. Since it was his decision, there was no need to go against his decision. Moreover, it was better to let Fang Yu go than to let Lu Xing go. They were not sure about Fang Yu's strength, but they thought that he could not be that strong. If something really happened, it was hard to say if he could protect them. As for protecting Fatso Lu, it was obviously impossible. If Fatso Lu died on Mount Yuan, they would have one less competitor in the future. The position of the Lu family's patriarch would still be possible. Let's do it then. Lu Xing nodded. He retreated to the side. Fang Yu had already walked down from the high platform. When he walked to Lu Xing's side, he bowed respectfully again. Master, I'll leave the matter of my son to you. Fang Yu nodded and did not say much. The trial on Mount Yuan officially began. Mount Yuan was not very far from the Lu family. However, the journey was not convenient. After all, that place was already a scene of barren hills and turbulent rivers. No one had set foot there for many years. Therefore, this time, they still used the transportation portal to go to Mount Yuan. After all, it was the most convenient and fastest way. Chapter 696. The Lu family's teleportation array was quite impressive. With a special spatial artifact, it only needed the support of spirit energy to operate. Lu Xing personally sat in the center of the array, mobilizing the energy in his dantian and slowly activating the array. After a while, the space in front of Fang Yu began to distort rapidly. Afterward, the power of spatial distortion burst out and condensed right next to Lu Xing. In the next second, the spatial distortion began to increase. The teleportation array to Mount Yuan had been activated. According to the order, Fang Yu and Fatso Lu were the first to enter the teleportation array. Fang Yu had experienced spatial teleportation no less than 100 times and had long been used to it. The moment he entered the space, he had already mobilized the spirit energy in his body and condensed it throughout his body. However, to his surprise, he didn't feel any bumps or discomfort in the teleportation space this time. This surprised Fang Yu. He slowly withdrew his aura and felt the power of space flowing calmly in the space. This power of space was very soft and floated on his body without causing any discomfort. Thinking about it, this should be related to the teleportation array. Usually, the spatial teleportation that Fang Yu experienced was forcefully opened by the power of the concept of an expert. Therefore, in the distorted space, there would be a strong sense of bumps and discomfort. And with the support of this array, the power of spatial teleportation was much more stable. Fang Yu secretly sighed with emotion at the grandeur of the rich. After a while, a light flashed in front of his eyes, and Fang Yu and Fatso Lu had already appeared in a forest. In front of them was a dense forest. In the forest, the vegetation was so dense that it was difficult to see the direction. All kinds of branches and leaves blocked in front of them, and what greeted them was a sea of green. Fang Yu had never seen such a dense forest before. Moreover, in this dense forest, there were traces of hidden power circulating. This power was very strange. Fang Yu had never seen it before. Vaguely, this power still made Fang Yu a little wary. He released all of his perception and scanned the space around him. Not far away there were a few familiar auras. It was Fatso Lu's younger brother and the few elders. The distance was not very far. While Fang Yu was sensing his surroundings, Fatso Lu had already figured out the direction. He winked at Fang Yu and said, "Let's go, it's not safe here." When Fatso Lu spoke, there was still some panic on his face, as if he was faintly afraid of something. This made Fang Yu a little confused. He had already scanned the entire mountain forest. There were no powerful spirit beasts around. Other than Fatso Lu's brothers and the elders who came in just now, there was no one else. Unable to understand why Fatso Lu was so nervous, Fang Yu frowned. Just as she was about to speak, Fatso Lu explained, "I'm not afraid of the spirit beasts in this forest. Sometimes, what was scarier than the jungle was the human heart." His words were neither salty nor light, and there seemed to be a hint of self-mockery. After saying that, he quickened his pace. "What do you mean?" Fang Yu raised his eyebrows and asked. "Human heart?" In this dense forest, there was no one else other than them. In other words, Fatso Lu was hinting at his brothers. When he came to his senses, Fatso Lu spoke again. He pointed at the palm print on his chest and said with lingering fear, "Do you see it? Is this palm print familiar?" As he spoke, Fang Yu had already looked around the palm print. It was bright red. Looking at the extent of the palm print, the person who did it did not hold back. Moreover, this palm print was formed only 6 hours ago. Within 6 hours, Fatso Lu was only out of Fang Yu's sight when he was hunting at the back of the mountain. In other words, you were attacked when you were at the back of the mountain? Fang Yu already had a rough idea in his heart. However, he still did not dare to believe it. After all, those in the back of the mountain were his brothers. Even if there were obstacles between brothers, there was no need to kill. That's right. Fatso Lu nodded his head and said with a bitter smile, "Since the two masters are not here, they have no fear. For the position of the family head, sooner or later, they will attack me." Fatso Lu smiled bitterly and his face was full of helplessness. "Who did it?" Fang Yu raised his eyebrows and asked Fatso Lu. Although he already had the answer in his heart, Fang Yu still wanted to hear it from Fatso Lu. "That's my fourth brother." Fatso Lu did not hide it and said directly. "It was really him." Fang Yu murmured in his heart. "Do you still remember the 2 purple spiritual birds in his hands?" After saying that, Fatso Lu looked at Fang Yu and asked again. "Yes." Fang Yu nodded. It was those 2 purple spiritual birds that allowed his fourth brother to win in the riding and archery round. "He got the guns from me. Those 3 birds were originally mine." At this point, the bitter smile on Fatso Lu's face deepened. Fang Yu frowned. This was something that he did not expect. He could predict that the fourth young master would attack Fatso Lu, but he did not expect that he would actually snatch Fatso Lu's trophies. No wonder the 2 of them were the last to return to the Lu family. Moreover, Fatso Lu's state at that time looked very strange, as if he had suffered a serious injury. Logically speaking, Fatso Lu was a smart person and should not have been taken by the fourth young master. Even if the trophies were stolen, why would Fatso Lu swallow the insult? "Do you want to know why I didn't expose this matter?" Fatso Lu murmured and saw Fang Yu's puzzled expression, so he asked with a smile. "Why?" Fang Yu did not like to keep people in suspense, so he asked directly. "Endure." After a long while, Fatso Lu said slowly, "A little impatience spoils great plans." Fatso Lu said with a smile, "Now, I am alone in the Lu family, and my father can't look after me all the time. Master and the rest are not here, and these people will attack me sooner or later. If I act too strong now, it will only make them more anxious to attack. On the other hand, if I behave now, they may not attack so quickly. This matter has to be considered at length." Fatso Lu pushed aside the thick branches and leaves in front of him, and after saying this helplessly, he took the lead and left the place. "What do you plan to do in the future?" Fang Yu followed behind. With Fatso Lu leading the way, it was not difficult to walk. After thinking for a while, he still asked, "Swallow the insult and think at length. As for the future, let's talk about it later." Fatso Lu sounded even more helpless. "Anyway, for now, surviving is the most important thing. A little impatience spoils great plans." "I hope so." Fang Yu nodded and did not say anything else. Fatty Lu's helpless and sorrowful words were engraved in Fang Yu's mind. However, what Fang Yu did not expect was that these words would save his life not long after. Chapter 697. If it wasn't for the fact that he kept these words in his heart, Fang Yu might have disappeared from this continent after that incident. It had to be said that Fatty Lu's state of mind was much stronger than the average person. Many people of his age would not be able to think like him. However, this didn't seem to be the behavior of a young master of the number 1 family in Mirage Sea City. Unable to figure it out, Fang Yu stopped thinking about it. This dense forest seemed to be deep and unfathomable. Fatty Lu led the way in front. After more than an hour, the forest slowly became less dense. Fatty Lu's face was vigilant, as if he was afraid that his younger brothers would catch up. At this point, he had already released all of his senses, completely enveloping the surrounding space. They didn't catch up. Fang Yu shook his head, indicating that Fatty Lu shouldn't be nervous. After all, this guy had been walking in front all the way and was still on tenterhooks. It was really tiring. That's good. Fatty Lu smiled bitterly and shook his head. After looking up at the dense forest that couldn't see the sun, he smiled and said, "It seems that this year's trial will be extended again." As Fatty Lu said, he reached out and pinched the branches and leaves beside him. After half a day, the branches and leaves were still covered with a thick layer of dew. Fang Yu felt that the rain's shoes were strange. The reason why Fatty Lu said this was probably because after these years of trial, he was already certain of the traces of the spiritual bird beast. Needless to say, Fang Yu also knew that the spiritual bird beasts would not be entrenched in this deep forest. Most of the spiritual bird beasts liked to entrench in deep and dangerous canyons. The more dangerous the canyons, the more likely it was to see the traces of the spiritual bird beast. After all, these spiritual beasts were very intelligent. Not only were they good at camouflage, but they were also very good at hiding. Therefore, no one would be able to set foot in the places they brought along. It was no wonder that Lu Xing would arrange the last trial in this Yuan mountain. Moreover, it was to take the beast bones from the side of the spiritual bird beast. This matter was not so easy to complete. In the past, it was the elders who had a headache. This year, it must be the young masters who had a headache. Fatso Lu didn't mind. After a short rest, he continued on his journey. Fang Yu followed behind. Looking at Fatso Lu's slowly twisting figure, he thought for a moment and asked, "In the past, how long did you guys spend on the trial of Mount Yuan?" 2 months. As soon as Fang Yu finished speaking, Fatso Lu immediately spoke up. He didn't intend to hide anything, so he turned around and said to Fang Yu, "Generally, the place where the teleportation portal teleports is located is quite a distance away from where the spirit birds and beasts reside. In the past, it was near the exit of the dense forest. This year, he didn't expect it to be in the depths of the forest. Just walking out from the depths of the forest would take at least a month, not to mention looking for the traces of the spirit bird." When Fatso Lu said this, a bitter smile appeared on his face. "It seems that father is doing this on purpose this year. The position of family head will soon be revealed to Zhen Xiao. You have a great chance." Fang Yu heard this and nodded. It could be seen that Lu Xing took special care of his sons in this year's trial. Fang Yu was the closest to him and could see that Lu Xing's brows were tightly knitted. He should be worried about this. But in the end, Fatso Lu's performance wasn't bad. Lu Xing had always been partial to Fatso Lu, so the position of family head had to be Fatso Lu. "I hope it has nothing to do with me." Fatso Lu still shook his head and said, "Now that I'm a candidate for family head, isn't this the same as a tall tree attracting the wind? Originally, the few of them were always competing with me. Once I become a candidate for family head, I'm afraid they will find a chance to kill me." Fatso Lu frowned and slowly expressed his worries. Fang Yu nodded. What he said was not without reason. Now, he didn't have any forces behind him. If he acted too conspicuously in the Lu family, the consequences would be unimaginable. Those younger brothers would directly gang up on Fatso Lu. When that time came, Fatso Lu would really die without a burial place. Lu Xing had probably already expected this. He was a person of character, so he definitely wouldn't let Fatso Lu take such a big risk. However, this had little to do with Fong Yu. Fong Yu didn't want to interfere in their Lu family's affairs. Between him and Fatso Lu, it was just a relationship of interest. Fatso Lu paid, Fong Yu did things, and that was it. It would be much easier to continue on the road ahead. In the depths of the dense forest, it was gradually replaced by sparse branches and leaves. The road ahead didn't need Fatso Lu to lead the way. According to Fatso Lu, this was considered the northern area of the dense forest. There was still a long time before they could walk out of the dense forest. However, this place was not as difficult as the depths of the dense forest. This time, they didn't know if there was something wrong with the transportation array, so it sent them to such a distant place. Fatso Lu didn't sigh and continued to move forward. This was the northernmost part of the dense forest. Fatso Lu said that the spiritual bird beast was in the depths of a dangerous canyon in the northernmost part of the forest. Fong Yu was a little confused. After retracting all of his perception, he didn't sense anyone's aura within a few kilometers behind him. In other words, Fatso Lu's brothers didn't have any intention of coming in this direction at all. It was obvious that they weren't heading in this direction. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong location? Fong Yu frowned in confusion and asked Fatso Lu in front of him. I didn't get it wrong. Fatso Lu shook his head and looked at Fong Yu's troubled expression. He waved his hand and said with a bitter smile, They didn't come in this direction, did they? They probably went to the swamp in the east. Compared to the canyon, the terrain there isn't as dangerous, and the road there is easier than ours. So there's no need to think they must have gone in that direction. Fatso Lu said this very casually, but it directly made Fong Yu a little confused. If the road there was easier to walk on, why did they come here? Just as this question appeared in Fong Yu's mind, Fatso Lu had already opened his mouth to explain. There are so many of them, and they're going to fight over it. When the time comes, there'll definitely be a dispute. Even if there's no dispute in this place, there'll definitely be someone who wants to attack me. When Fatso Lu said this, he sneered in his heart. The meaning of this sentence was very obvious, and he was talking about his unlucky fourth brother. Crack, crack, bang. Just as Fatso Lu was explaining, a crisp sound suddenly came from not far away. The sound wasn't very loud, but it appeared suddenly in this dense forest, and it was especially ear-piercing. Who is it? Who's in front? Come out. Chapter 698. Fong Yu's gaze was already fixed on the back of a towering tree in front of him. It was obvious that the sound of footsteps had come from that location. The distance was so close. Fong Yu was a little stunned. He had just retracted his perception. There was actually someone who could conceal themselves from his perception, and they were so close to him. If it wasn't for the fact that the cultivation level was much higher, it was impossible for this to happen. In other words, the other party was a powerhouse, and his strength was much higher than Fong Yu's. Not only Fong Yu, but Fatty Lu was also shocked. His face was immediately full of vigilance, as if he was facing a great enemy. The tree was right in front of him, and the footsteps just now were behind that tree. The distance was definitely not more than 10 meters. At such a close distance, and in a situation where he was already exposed, Fong Yu tried to release all his perception. In the end, there was still no reaction. There was no aura. Who on earth is it? Fatty Lu couldn't sit still anymore and shouted at the top of his voice. There were already ripples in his heart. Could it be that it was another powerhouse that those unlucky brothers of his invited? Did they want to bury him here in this dense forest? Crack, crack. While Fatty Lu was muttering in his heart, Fong Yu had already stepped forward. Instead of wasting time, it was better to move directly. He slowly gathered all the spiritual qi in his Dantian sea of qi into his body. The space entrance of the 8 desolate secret land was already slowly twisting. Fong Yu was fully prepared. Even if he wasn't a match for him, he could easily escape when the time came. Slowly walking to the side of the tree, Fang Yu had already poured all the spiritual qi in his body into the dragon armor. The dragon armor shone brightly. This light was enough to withstand the violent attack of a peak martial emperor powerhouse. Then, he suddenly turned around and appeared behind the tree. While his eyes were alert, his body had already relaxed. In front of him was just a child. The child was not very old, at most 7 years old. His face was young and innocent, and his eyes were especially clear. He looked harmless to humans and animals. Fang Yu hurriedly breathed a sigh of relief. It was no wonder that no matter how much he released his perception earlier, he was unable to sense the presence of any powerhouses. This child's cultivation base had yet to be solidified, so naturally, he would not emit any aura. Fang Yu smiled bitterly and shook his head. He walked up to the child and asked, "Little friend, why are you here?" As he said this, Fatso Lu had already walked to Fang Yu's side and pulled Fang Yu behind him. His eyes were filled with vigilance as he gave Fang Yu a look. "This is the dangerous Mt Yuan, not to mention the depths of the forest. Do you think it's normal for such a harmless child to appear here?" When Fatso Lu said this, he had already pulled Fang Yu a few steps back, putting a safe distance between them. Finally, he said slowly, "Little friend, what are you doing here?" I'm lost." There was a faint look of fear in the child's eyes, but it wasn't that obvious under his childish appearance. "Lost? Then how did you get here?" After hearing the child's words, the vigilance in Fatso Lu's eyes became even more intense. It wasn't just Fatso Lu. Fang Yu could already tell that there was a problem. It was normal for a weak child to get lost. However, it was very abnormal for him to be able to walk to the depths of the forest of Mt Yuan despite being lost and looking extremely healthy, without a single speck of dirt on his body. He was a little shocked. Fortunately, Fatso Lu was cautious. Otherwise, Fang Yu would have already been careless. However, on second thought, such a child shouldn't be too good at lying. After all, Fang Yu could only see a little bit of fear in the child's eyes. There was only clarity. However, his inexplicable appearance in the depths of Mt Yuan still made Fang Yu feel a little strange. "Then tell me, where did you get lost? Where is your home?" Fatso Lu didn't intend to let down his guard at all. He still looked at the child and asked. He maintained a distance of 5 meters away from the child. He also released all of his perception and carefully observed his surroundings. "I don't know where my home is." Faced with Fatso Lu's questioning, the child's face was obviously full of doubts. However, he didn't know whether Fatso Lu was good or evil. Instead, he answered honestly. After that, he said, "I ran out of a cave." As the child spoke, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the faintly visible mountain range, not far away. "Ran out of a cave?" Fatso Lu frowned and looked at the mountain range, not far away. There was also a dense forest there. Moreover, it was also the path they had to pass through to get to the canyon. Yes, there are weirdos in there. They suck the blood of children. There are also several children in there. The child nodded. When he mentioned the cave, the fear in his eyes became even more intense. This fear was emitted from the depths of his heart. To be precise, it was the nature of the human heart. It seemed that the child wasn't lying. Weirdos? Suck blood? Fatso Lu was obviously stunned when he heard this. There are such people? He frowned and fell into deep thought. However, his words reminded Fang Yu. People who suck blood, he had seen them before. Not long ago in Shire, when he went to Desolate City Mountain, he was deceived by the 2 experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm into the heart-devouring valley and met the master of the heart-devouring valley. That was the bloodthirsty demon master. The bloodthirsty mental cultivation method he cultivated was to devour the flesh and blood of experts and the power of will to improve his strength. However, Fong Yu had never heard of devouring the blood of children. Thinking about it, it should be some forbidden cultivation method. He's telling the truth. While Fong Yu was muttering in his heart, Fatso Lu had already turned around and whispered something to Fong Yu. Then, he relaxed his vigilance. I didn't expect that there would be such a crooked practice in Mount Yuan. After Fatso Lu relaxed his vigilance, he gritted his teeth. Looking at the young child with a childlike face, he was suddenly a little angry. What the hell are these people doing? They won't even let a child go? It might be some kind of forbidden cultivation method, Fong Yu explained when he saw Fatso Lu's expression darkening. Fatso Lu frowned, seeming to be a little puzzled. Fong Yu smiled slightly and didn't explain further. He only said softly, I've seen similar cultivation methods. The people who cultivate them are usually existences that are neither human nor ghost. No wonder the child calls them monsters. Fatso Lu nodded as he came to a sudden realization. Child, how many people are in the cave? After thinking for a while, Fatso Lu looked at the child and asked the most important question. It seemed that he already had an idea in his heart. Chapter 699. What do you want? Fong Yu kicked Fatso Lu. He gave him a look and didn't say anything. After all, Fong Yu had accompanied Fatso Lu here in the capacity of a guard. His purpose was very simple, to find the spiritual bird beast and retrieve the beast bone. Therefore, Fong Yu didn't want to meddle in other people's business. However, judging from Fatso Lu's intention, he really wanted to inquire about this matter. Fatso Lu turned around and waved his hand without saying anything. There is a strange man in the cave and 3 adults, 3 very bad adults. He is the one who caught us and brought us to the cave. In addition to me, there are 12 children who were caught. However, a few children have already been killed by the strange man. The child murmured, and the fear in his eyes became even more intense. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something again. He turned around and said to Fatso Lu, by the way, there are many birds in the cave. The whole cave is filled with birds. Birds? Fatso Lu frowned. What birds? Very fierce birds. They are very big and their cries are very scary. The child didn't mean to hide anything. He scratched his head and told Fatso Lu directly. Spiritual bird beast. Hearing the child's description, Fatso Lu patted his head and suddenly looked surprised. The spiritual bird beast's habit was that it was born to love to stay in the cave. It hides during the day and comes out at night. It was an expert at hunting at night. The reason why Fatso Lu wanted that ravine was because there were many bottomless caves in that ravine. In the caves, it was easy to see traces of spiritual bird beasts. Master, it seems that we don't need to go so far this time. There are spiritual bird beasts in this cave. Fatso Lu looked back at Fong Yu with an excited face and said. Only Fong Yu looked at Fatso Lu as if he was looking at a fool. Fong Yu had already seen through this guy's thoughts. Finding the whereabouts of the spiritual bird beasts was fake. Saving people should be his real goal. However, he was afraid that Fong Yu wouldn't agree, so he declined. Fong Yu really didn't want to agree. After all, the child said it very clearly. Other than the strange man, there were 3 other people. It was just like the bloodthirsty demon master and his subordinates in the heart-devouring valley. Fong Yu coming out of the heart-devouring valley was tantamount to escaping death. He really didn't want to experience that feeling again. However, seeing that Fatso Lu had made up his mind, Fong Yu didn't say anything else. From the looks of it, he had to participate in this matter. Kid, can you take us to that cave? Let's get rid of that weirdo, okay? Fatso Lu looked at the child, and his tone became much gentler. To his surprise, the child shook his head. How would I know if you're with those bad guys? It wasn't easy for me to escape. Hearing Fatso Lu's words, a vigilant expression instantly appeared on the child's immature face. This made Fatso Lu a little speechless. Previously, he had been suspicious of the child. Now, he had become the target of suspicion. If we were bad guys, would we need to discuss it with you? Fatso Lu was quite patient. He looked at the child with a smile and said, "Either you take us there, or you'll be eaten by spirit beasts in the depths of this dense forest at night." After saying that, he turned around and left. I'll go. As expected, after Fatso Lu's threat, the child thought for a moment and stopped Fatso Lu. After all, he was young and his mind wasn't fully developed. After being scared by Fatso Lu, he didn't know anything. That's right. Don't worry, we definitely won't let that strange man take you away. Fatso Lu looked at the little boy with a smile and said. Then, he let the little boy lead the way in front of him. Looking at the calm expression on his face, it was as if he was doing something insignificant. On the other hand, Fang Yu began to worry. What was the exact situation in the cave? How many people were there, and how strong were they? These were all unknown. Moreover, a monster who cultivated this kind of cultivation method would definitely not be weak. With Fang Yu's strength, although it wasn't difficult for him to protect himself, if something happened to Fatso Lu, wouldn't the tens of thousands of crystals be wasted? Don't worry, we'll act according to the circumstances. If it doesn't work out, we'll just leave directly. Fatso Lu saw that Fang Yu had a lot on his mind and couldn't help but comfort him. Easy for you to say. Fang Yu snorted coldly and didn't say much. Following the child, Fang Yu continued to walk in the direction the child had pointed out. At the same time, Fang Yu constantly released his perception to scan his surroundings. The little boy's mind was clear, and he still remembered the way he came clearly. After making many turns in the dense forest, he didn't encounter any obstacles. However, what Fang Yu couldn't figure out was that when his perception swept the surrounding space, he couldn't sense any aura in this dense forest. Not to mention people, he didn't even see a spirit beast. Even during the cannibalization competition, one could still vaguely see one or two powerful and tyrannical spirit beasts in such a harsh environment in the mountain of cold smoke. In this dense mountain range that was rich in materials, there was no reason not to find a spirit beast. While he was hesitating, the child's footsteps had already come to a stop. In front of him was a towering mountain peak. The peak of the mountain peak couldn't be seen. Fang Yu and the others were already at the back of the mountain peak. In front of them was a small path that had already been trampled out. At this time, the child pointed at the bottom of the path in front of him and said in a low voice, "Go in from here. The cave is in front. That strange person is inside." The little boy's voice was very low, and there was a faint fear in it. It seemed that the cave had really left a big shadow on him. "Look again. Could it be that you're mistaken?" Looking in the direction of the little boy's finger, Fatso Lu frowned and slowly withdrew his perception. His gaze was complicated. Not only him, but Fang Yu had also withdrawn his perception. In his heart, like Fatso Lu, he also had some doubt. His perception had already swept the entire cave, and there was no aura. That so-called strange person, those adults, and even the spirit birds and beasts in the cave were nowhere to be seen. In other words, the entire cave was empty. "That's right. It's here. That's why I ran out." The little boy nodded his head in agreement. From the fear in his eyes and his body language, it didn't seem like he was lying. Moreover, he had no need to lie. "That's strange." Fatso Lu frowned and turned to look at Fang Yu. "What should we do? Should we go in and take a look?" "Let's take a look." Fang Yu shook his head and didn't say much. Since the cave was empty, it was very likely that those people were no longer there. Naturally, there wouldn't be any danger. Fatso Lu nodded and took the lead to walk forward along the path. Chapter 700. The path wasn't long, and it only took a few breaths. After winding around for a while, A cave that could allow two people to enter and exit at the same time appeared in front of Fang Yu. It's inside, they're all inside. When the little boy saw the cave, the fear on his face became even more intense. He directly hid behind Fatso Lu. Don't be afraid. Follow me. Fatso Lu smiled and shook his head. He pulled the little boy and slowly stepped into the cave. Fang Yu followed closely behind. Although the cave was already empty, he was still on high alert. The cave was pitch black. A straight tunnel led to the depths, so deep that the end couldn't be seen. This place was a little similar to the bloodthirsty demon master's cave. Thinking of that bloodthirsty demon master, Fang Yu still couldn't calm down. After all, that kind of bloody scene was really disgusting. Fortunately, Fatso Lu was here this time. He walked in front. If anything happened, Fang Yu could be mentally prepared. Just like that, he pulled the little boy and walked forward carefully. Fang Yu also followed behind unhurriedly. This tunnel was really a little long, and the further in they went, the lower the visibility. In the end, it was already pitch black. Finally, after a few minutes, this tunnel seemed to have come to an end. After a turn, the cave began to open up. In front of them was a huge space. Compared to the Lu family's square, it was even better. However, there were no items placed in this space. It was also empty inside. There was no one inside. Is it here? Fatso Lu frowned and looked at the little boy and asked. It's here. The little boy nodded his head in agreement, confirming that he wasn't mistaken. After saying that, the little boy added another sentence. But that monster and the others didn't stay here. It's here, but not here? Fatso Lu was already confused by the little boy's words. Obviously, this was illogical. Think again, did you remember wrongly? Fatso Lu scratched his head. He was already confused and couldn't figure out north. Here. She wasn't here. Fang Yu repeatedly muttered these words. After a long while, he suddenly reacted. Independent space. Fang Yu said slowly. In Fatso Lu's eyes, the little boy's logic was unclear, and there was a conflict between the two. However, Fang Yu had already gotten the gist of it. Clearly, this was not a problem with the little boy. It was a matter of space. Just like the independent space in the immortal demon grotto. Sean the old sheep had said the same thing. Here, yet not here. This meant that there was nothing wrong with the space, but there was a problem with the space node. This was not surprising. Previously, when Fang Yu was outside the cave, he had released all of his perception but had not sensed the aura of any powerhouse in the cave. Independent space? Fatso Lu was still a little confused. He looked at Fang Yu and asked with a frown. Those people are here, but they are not in this space. The space they are in is independent and different from this place. After saying that, Fang Yu directly released the space of the 8 desolate secret land and let Fatso Lu in. Fatso Lu nodded and walked in. After a long while, he slowly came out. When he came out, his face was already filled with shock. Master, what treasure is this? Can you sell it to me? Fatso Lu had already been convinced by the space in the 8 desolate secret land. Other than the shock on his face, he had already started to negotiate with Fang Yu. This thing was a life-saving artifact. Once in this space, who could be a match for it? However, Fang Yu shook his head. This kind of space cultivation method was not suitable for everyone to cultivate. As for space treasures, it was also rare in the world. At least, it was not something that could be bought with money. While Fatso Lu was a little disappointed, he slowly came to his senses. So, we still have to make a trip to their space? Fatso Lu looked at Fang Yu and asked. No. As soon as Fatso Lu said that, Fang Yu directly shook his head. Absolutely not. After saying that, Fang Yu added another sentence. What a joke. An independent space, that was someone else's world. Once inside, someone else would be in charge. Even if he did not make a move, without his will, it would be difficult to walk out of that independent space. Although the power of the Sin Throne was incomparably powerful, It was not omnipotent. Fang Yu definitely did not want to take such a big risk. The last time in the heart-sucking valley, it was just a fluke. Bloodthirsty demon master and his disciple had a problem, so he had the chance to sneak an attack. And this monster obviously would not have a conflict with the people around him. Moreover, Fang Yu was not 100% sure that the Sin royal family could break through all space powers. Then what should we do? Fatso Lu began to feel troubled. Seeing Fang Yu's determined expression, he did not ask further. If it was not for the great risk, Fang Yu would definitely not have a happy expression. Therefore, he did not persist. Let's find the spiritual bird beast first. We'll talk about the matter here when we come back. Fang Yu directly shook his head and had no intention of staying any longer. But Fatso Lu still stayed where he was. Looking at the little boy beside him, a troubled expression appeared on his face. What about him? We can't lose him, right? Fatso Lu looked at Fang Yu and asked. You're still the cunning one. Fang Yu snorted coldly. This Fatso Lu had obviously thought of a countermeasure. It was very troublesome to bring the little boy with him, but he could not just leave him in this mountain forest. Even if he was not found by that monster, he would not live for long in this mountain forest. It was troublesome to stay here. Losing him would not work. What else could he do? Fang Yu shook his head. The space in front of him began to distort. The entrance to the 8 desolate secret territory was slowly opening. One had to admit that this Fatso Lu was very calculative. The little boy was a little confused, but he had no choice. In the end, he could only walk into the 8 desolate secret territory obediently. At least, compared to here, it was much safer there. Master, you're really a good person. Fatso Lu looked at Fang Yu with a smile and said. However, Fang Yu had no intention of responding to him. He directly walked out of the cave through the entrance. He was really not used to this kind of dark space. Originally, he thought that he could find the spiritual bird beast in the cave. In this way, he could save a lot of time going back and forth. Now, it seemed that he still had to make a trip to that canyon. There was still a long way to go to the canyon that Fatso Lu had mentioned. Along the way, Fang Yu did not pay much attention to Fatso Lu. Following the dense forest, after walking quickly for more than half a month, Fatso Lu slowly came to a stop. In front of him was a vertical valley. Below, there was a bottomless ravine. Chapter 701. The canyon that Fatso Lu was talking about must be this ravine. The place where Fang Yu stopped was a waterfall that poured down in torrent. The waterfall flowed rapidly and majestically. It's right below here. Fatso Lu smiled slightly and looked at the sky. This speed was obviously beyond his expectations. Presumably, those few younger brothers are still quarreling over the few spiritual birds and beasts in the swamp, right? He laughed and did not say much. Following the path, he walked directly down the canyon. Fang Yu cursed in his heart. This damn Fatso was indeed scheming. They walked in 2 completely opposite directions. First, he could avoid the spoils from being fought over. Second, he could perfectly avoid his brothers who were full of malice. As for the trial of Mount Yuan, nominally there was no time limit. Those who could return safely within 3 months were considered to have won. After all, the rest were all family members and there was nothing to compare. What Lu Xing wanted to see was the strength of his sons. However, it was obvious that he was greatly disappointed in the past few years. What he saw was only the strength of the elders. Fatso Lu's bloated figure shuttled in front and his movements were quite agile. Fang Yu followed closely behind. Along the way, Fang Yu was cautious and vigilant. Fortunately, they did not encounter any danger along the way. Fang Yu even felt that Mount Yuan was too peaceful. It was not even comparable to Mount Purple Spirit, where the alchemy saint lived in seclusion. At least there were spiritual beasts that Fang Yu could not afford to offend. In this mountain range, it seemed to be a little too peaceful. It was so peaceful that Fong Yu's scalp tingled. He felt that something was wrong. Fatso Lu, on the other hand, had a big heart. He walked in front without any vigilance. Obviously, with Fong Yu's help, he was much more relaxed. Following the path, accompanied by the waterfall pouring down beside them, the scenery below the canyon was soon in sight. Compared to the dense forest above the canyon, the vegetation below was much sparser. Perhaps because there was no light all year round, many plants could not survive. Obviously, it was not Fatso Lu's first time coming to this place. Along the way, he was very familiar with the place. After coming down from the hillside, Fatso Lu stopped in front of a cave the size of half a person and began to use his perception to investigate the situation inside. There's no need to look, this place is empty. Fong Yu shook his head and reminded him. Obviously, this place had been swept clean by Fatso Lu and the others last year. Even if Fong Yu hadn't used his perception to scan this cave in advance, according to the living habits of the spiritual birds and beasts, they wouldn't have stayed in a cave that had already been swept. Furthermore, it was unlikely that there would be any spiritual birds or beasts in this area. There really isn't. Fatso Lu withdrew his perception and shook his head with a bitter smile. Let's go, he muttered to himself as his gaze landed on the forest not far away. From his eyes, Fong Yu could see a hint of fear. Sure enough, when Fong Yu scanned the forest with his perception, he discovered that something was wrong. There was a faintly discernible aura floating over there. Although the aura wasn't very strong, it came from a large area. This aura was the aura of a spiritual beast. Moreover, it wasn't just one, but a group. Spiritual beasts had always had the habit of forming groups, so there was nothing to be surprised about. For some reason, after sensing this aura, Fong Yu even felt a little excited. This was because he hadn't felt this aura for a long time. Fatso Lu's gaze had already begun to become vigilant. The road in front of him was the only entrance to this side of the canyon. After all, this was the appearance of the one-line sky. In other words, if he wanted to continue forward, he had to face the spiritual beasts directly. Moreover, they were spiritual beasts that lived in group. This kind of spiritual beast wasn't very strong in single combat. However, when they coordinated in battle, the strength that erupted was much stronger than their usual strength in single combat. If he wasn't careful, he would be at risk of dying. Fatso Lu was a little hesitant. However, after thinking about it again and again, he still walked forward. After all, this canyon was the only place he knew where spiritual birds and beasts gathered. At this time, the rest must have been occupied by his group of younger brothers. He continued to move forward. Fong Yu had already expected this. He slowly gathered the power of the Qi in his dantian on his whole body. In front of him, a black shadow gradually appeared. Just by looking at the outline, one could see how strong this spiritual beast was. Strong flesh, thick hair, and the two sharp fangs in its mouth. Although its physical strength was only comparable to the martial king realm. However, the sturdiness of his physical body was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Fatso Lu didn't hesitate and directly pulled out a shiny short knife from his waist. This short knife was made of an unknown iron. It looked extremely thin. However, just by looking at the cold light on the blade, one could clearly feel that this short knife could cut iron as if it was mud. After all, Fatso Lu was the young master of the first family in Fantasy Sea City. It was naturally not strange that he had such a treasure on him. Fong Yu slowly retreated to the side. He didn't intend to make a move. After all, Fong Yu was working for money. Although he had some friendship with Fatso Lu, it shouldn't be a problem for Fatso Lu to deal with these spiritual beasts. Moreover, Fong Yu's mission was only to protect Fatso Lu's safety. That was all. Roar! At the same time, the behemoth in front of Fong Yu and Fatso Lu also smelled danger. After a roar, A few spirit beasts that were similar in size to it surrounded it. After forming a circle, their gazes were already fixed on Fatso Lu. Roar! One of the spiritual beasts roared at Fatso Lu, as if it was a warning, but also as if it was provoking him. However, at this time, Fatso Lu was no longer in the mood to guess. The short knife in his hand changed direction. The blade was directly aimed at the head of one of the spiritual beasts. Zing zing! There were already rumbling sounds coming from the short knife. Fatso Lu's body swayed, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared beside the spiritual beast. The short knife in his hand was about to fall in an instant. Boom! The moment it was about to fall, there was a rumbling sound. The fellow behind this spiritual beast was the first to react. Its sharp fangs were directly aimed at Fatso Lu's wrist. In this way, Fatso Lu was forced to withdraw the short knife in his hand. This group of spiritual beasts was very intelligent. Fang Yu secretly sighed in his heart. This coordinated battle, their cooperation was really perfect. Not only Fang Yu, but Fatso Lu was also extremely shocked at this time. However, facing such a group of spiritual beasts at the same time, he couldn't let his guard down. Chapter 702. The attack did not succeed. Fatty Lu took a few steps back and instantly distanced himself from the group of spirit beasts. His eyes were a little solemn, as if he was looking for the flaws of this group of spirit beasts. However, at this moment, these spirit beasts were already on high alert. The sneak attack just now did not succeed. It was obviously impossible to use this method again. The few spirit beasts instantly pulled apart their positions. The one that seemed to be the strongest was facing Fatty Lu. The remaining few stood behind it. From front to back, they formed a triangular formation. Fatty Lu could not find any flaws. No matter who he attacked, the remaining spirit beasts would charge over ferociously and tear him into pieces. Fatty Lu secretly complained in his heart. To deal with such spirit beasts with strong physical strength and thick skin, it was obvious that he could not use force. Moreover, their intelligence was very high. Helpless, Fatty Lu could only look at Fang Yu for help. If this stalemate continued, this group of spirit beasts might not have the patience. Perhaps they would directly charge at Fatty Lu. At such a close distance and with so many spirit beasts, if they directly charged at Fatty Lu, he would definitely not be able to escape. Fang Yu could only shake his head. He slowly stepped forward and stood beside Fatty Lu. These spirit beasts did not intend to attack for the time being, but it did not mean that they were easy to deal with. Especially the spirit beast that was facing Fatty Lu. There was no fear in its eyes. It even seemed to be thinking about how to take down Fatty Lu. I'll disrupt their formation. The rest is up to you, Fang Yu whispered in Fatty Lu's ear. He had been observing for a long time. The position of this group of spirit beasts could be said to be impeccable. If he wanted to take them down, he could only disrupt their formation first and then wait for an opportunity to move. Fatty Lu did not say anything and directly nodded. In the next second, Fang Yu's aura erupted. The heavenly will wandering dragon extinction instantly attacked. Dense fist shadows condensed beside him. At the same time, Fang Yu's figure had already appeared in front of the first spirit beast at lightning speed. Behind him, the dense fist shadows also followed. The target was the top of its head. With a few battles with spirit beasts, Fang Yu had basically figured out the weaknesses of this group of spirit beasts. Their greatest weakness was that they had no weakness. After all, the strength of one's physical body was invincible. The position of the head was relatively weaker. Roar! As expected, when the violent fist shadow was about to reach the head of the spirit beast, it let out a low roar. Then, he leaped into the air, trying to dodge the fatal blow. Fang Yu reacted quickly. The moment he leaped up, his fist had already landed on the spirit beast behind him, which did not have time to put up its guard. Boom! After a series of muffled sounds, the enormous creature was directly sent flying. For this punch, Fang Yu mobilized more than half of the spiritual energy in his body. The power that erupted could be said to be extremely violent. Rumble, after a long while, the spirit beast slowly landed on the ground. Following a loud explosion, a cloud of yellow sand was sent flying. Fortunately, this spirit beast could be considered to have rough skin and thick flesh. After being sent flying by such a violent blow from Fang Yu, it fell to the ground and was still breathing. Roar! The moment Fang Yu's attack succeeded, the spirit beasts on both sides roared into the sky, and a terrifying aura erupted from their bodies. Two spirit beasts, one on the left and one on the right, rushed toward Fang Yu crazily. Looking at their posture, it seemed that they wanted to smash Fang Yu into pieces. Fortunately, Fang Yu had already prepared in his heart. Almost at the moment when the two spirit beasts rushed over, his figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. When the two spirit beasts rushed over, the original triangular formation was instantly messed up, and the spirit beast in the lead was already alone at this time. Fatty Lu found the right opportunity and did not hesitate at the moment. The short knife in his hand danced in the wind, and after a burst of air-piercing sounds, it directly pierced into the head of the spirit beast. Then, Fatty Lu circulated the aura in his body and once again punched on the head of the spirit beast. Boom! That spirit beast was directly sent flying. Without the support of its companions, its reaction was obviously much slower. A moment later, that behemoth directly fell to the ground and died. Fatty Lu's attack was quite ruthless and did not hold back. After easily taking care of one of the spirit beasts, one of the remaining three was injured and the other two were exhausted. Even so, they still crazily charged at Fang Yu, as if they had encountered some enemy. Fang Yu only blindly dodged and did not fight with them. Taking advantage of one of the tired gaps, Fatty Lu's figure had already arrived. Poochie! The short knife easily penetrated its head, as if it was in an uninhabited land. In the next second, Fatty Lu directly pulled out and stabbed at the last spirit beast in front of Fang Yu. At this moment, this spirit beast only had eyes for Fang Yu and did not notice at all. The shiny dagger had already pierced into its head. Fatty Lu's attack was really decisive and fast. Moreover, he did not leave any leeway. In this aspect, he looked somewhat similar to his fourth brother. After finishing off the battlefield, Fang Yu swept the dust off his face. He was more or less disappointed in his heart. After all, they had been in the Yuan mountain range for such a long time, and the only group of spiritual beasts they had seen were so weak. They really couldn't understand why the elders kept saying that the Yuan mountain range was extremely dangerous. These guys don't seem to be entrenched here. At the same time, Fatty Lu squatted beside the corpse of a spirit beast and muttered aloud. "What do you mean?" Fang Yu frowned and walked to Fatty Lu's side. "Look at this." Fatty Lu stretched out his hand and pointed at the knife wound on one of the spirit beasts. The thin and long knife wound did not look very clear from afar. However, at this moment, at a closer distance, one would realize how frightening the knife wound was. The thin and sharp knife wound directly cut through the lower half of the spirit beast's body and at least half of its body. However, the knife wound was not very deep, so it was not life-threatening. However, this spirit beast's fur was incomparably tough. Its physical strength had already reached the martial king realm. It was impossible for an ordinary knife or sword to tear its skin. Even if it was the short knife in Fatty Lu's hand, it would be very difficult to leave such a wound on this spirit beast's rough skin and thick flesh. However, Fatty Lu's focus was obviously not on the weapon. He frowned and said, "This spirit beast is either not from this generation, or there is someone else in this generation other than us." Fatty Lu's words slowly appeared in Fang Yu's ears. Fang Yu finally reacted at this moment. Staring at the knife wound on the spirit beast's body, he was somewhat puzzled. Chapter 703. Let's not talk about what kind of weapon could leave such shocking scars on their bodies. Fang Yu really wanted to know who was the person who left these scars on their bodies. During the fight just now, Fang Yu did not use any weapons and only dodged, so he did not hurt this spirit beast. As for Fatso Lu, he also unleashed an attack. His attack was aimed at Chu Feng's forehead. Moreover, the short knife in his hand was not enough to leave a long scar on this spirit beast. He looked at the scars on the spirit beast. It was obvious that these scars were formed in the last few days. Fang Yu and the others were not in this canyon in the last few days. Moreover, along the way, Fang Yu had been perceiving the things around him, but he did not find the presence of any powerhouses. In other words, these spirit beasts had migrated from somewhere else. It was no wonder that when they saw Fatso Lu, their eyes were so vigilant and they directly warned him. Moreover, during the fight with Fang Yu just now, they were charging at him without any regard for their lives. It seemed that they had been injured not long ago, which was why they were so irritable. Who did this? Fang Yu frowned and looked at Fatso Lu's eyes. He seemed to have figured something out, so he quickly asked. I don't know. Unexpectedly, Fatso Lu shook his head directly. Then, he continued, anyway, it's not those elders, and it's not my brothers. They don't have such a long sword in their hands. Fatso Lu spoke slowly and directly excluded his brothers who came in with them. That meant that there was someone else in this Yuan mountain. Moreover, it seemed that this person was not very far from this mountain range. Could it be the doing of the monster in the cave? After pondering for a while, Fatso Lu looked at Fang Yu and asked. It doesn't look like it. Fang Yu shook his head directly. This spirit beast did not move very fast. Looking at the scars, it was not more than a week. It was obviously not possible for them to move from the cave to here within a week. As for the people in the cave, they probably wouldn't have left that independent space and come here. After thinking about it, there was obviously someone else in this mountain range. Be careful. Fatso Lu couldn't figure it out either, so he could only shake his head. This Yuan mountain was much stranger than the previous years. He had obviously noticed. However, the mission of coming to Mount Yuan this time was to find the existence of the spiritual bird beast. After thinking for a while, Fatso Lu didn't stay any longer and continued walking forward. Fang Yu followed closely behind. Along the way there were quite a few caves of various sizes. A few of them had traces of the existence of spiritual birds and beasts. However, there were no traces of the spiritual bird beasts inside. Just like that, they searched in this canyon for 3 to 5 days. They had already searched no less than hundreds of caves of various sizes. Fatso Lu furrowed his brows and revealed a troubled expression. That's strange. Why do these spiritual birds seem to have gone extinct? He sighed, looked at Fang Yu and said, logically speaking, as long as you find the right place, this spirit bird beast is not something difficult to find. How come we haven't even seen his shadow this year? As he complained, Fang Yu shrugged helplessly. Seeing that the canyon was about to come to an end, he was also distressed. Little did he know that in a dense forest not far away, there were 2 figures with similar vexed expressions on their faces. The 2 figures, one in front and one behind. The one in front was an elder of the Lu family. The figure behind him was the unlucky 4th young master of the Lu family. Elder, why is there no trace of the spiritual bird beast? The 4th young master looked at the elder with an impatient look on his face. They had been in this forest for almost a month. They had searched almost all the places they could find. Not to mention the figure of the spiritual bird beast, they didn't even see a strand of hair. There seems to be something wrong with Mount Yuan this year. The elder who was walking in front of the 4th young master was also frowning. He sighed, but he couldn't feel what was wrong. Forget it, let's search slowly. He comforted himself. Big Brother and the others went this way. They must have gone to the canyon. Looking at the time, they must have found the spiritual bird beast by now. As the fourth young master spoke, his eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. "What are you trying to do?" The elder's eyes narrowed as he looked back at the fourth young master and asked. He was the one who called the fourth young master since he was young. The elder naturally knew what the fourth young master was thinking. Just like in the back of the mountain, snatch him away. Sure enough, the fourth young master's expression was gloomy as he spoke with a deep gaze. "Fourth young master, this..." The elder frowned and looked a little dignified. "That's not very good, is it? After all, you know the family head's intentions." "It's better not. That old bastard, what does he mean? He has been partial to Big Brother since he was young and has never taken us seriously." Just as the elder was about to speak, he was coldly interrupted by the fourth young master. "Then," he snorted coldly. "Besides, even if we snatch him away, what can we do? The sixth elder and the seventh elder are no longer here. He's just an ant on a hot pan in the Liu family. He won't be able to jump for long. Even if Father is partial to him, so what? Father can't protect him forever, can he?" The fourth young master said coldly, his eyes already revealing a faint murderous intent. "Besides, when I snatched him from the back of the mountain last time, didn't he also not dare to say a word? If he dares to talk nonsense, I'll directly—" "Young master, I think you'd better not be so arrogant," the fourth young master said coldly, but the elder directly interrupted him. "You know what the family head means now. Although the elder behind the eldest young master is no longer here, this will only make the family head more protective of him. If we act rashly at this time, it will inevitably lead to trouble. Have the other young masters offended him now?" the elder said in a low voice and glanced at the fourth young master. Then, he continued, "Now is a special time. We must not have any direct conflict with him. Otherwise, if the family head becomes suspicious, you and I will not be able to bear the consequences. Sooner or later, the family head will be gone. At that time, if we act, won't it be a piece of cake? Also, don't think that he's really harmless just because he looks harmless on the surface. In fact, he's enduring silently. In terms of mental state, you can't compare with him for the time being. I feel that the more he's like this now, the more worried I am. Perhaps he's still planning something." The elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. He looked at the fourth young master and said, "You're not his opponent now. You must be careful in the future." Got it. Although the fourth young master was sinister and cunning, he still had some brains. Chapter 704. He nodded and didn't say anything else. After thinking for a while, the fourth young master looked at the elder and said, "Instead of being on tenterhooks and enduring everything, why don't we wait? I think it's better to take advantage of this great opportunity of Mount Yuan's trial and—" As he said this, a short knife appeared in the fourth young master's hand. The murderous intent in his eyes disappeared. Moreover, the kid who is guarding him this time is just an alchemist. I've been unhappy with him for a long time. Only Father and the others take him seriously. That kid really thinks he's something. If we kill the two of them together, we can frame that kid for being weak and killed by the spirit beasts here. Anyway, he's not a member of our Liu family. Even if Father blames him, who can he blame?" the fourth young master said sinisterly, and the elder slowly frowned. What he said was not without reason, however. After thinking for a while, he still shook his head. "No." After saying that, he looked at the fourth young master's puzzled eyes and continued, "That kid doesn't seem to be very strong on the surface. But he can refine good pills. This means that there must be a powerful force behind him. If something happens to him in the Liu family, the force behind him will come looking for him. The Liu family may not be able to bear it. If the Liu family is gone, what's the point of doing all this? Even if the position of the Liu family's patriarch is given to you, what can you do?" The elder's words slowly entered the fourth young master's ears. After the fourth young master heard it, The cold, murderous intent on his face slowly disappeared. The elder's words were very reasonable. He didn't know if there was a force behind Feng Yu. It was just that doing this was indeed very risky. After thinking for a while, he sighed and snorted coldly. Then let's think at length. In the depths of the canyon, Fatty Lu once again walked out of an empty cave. His eyes were a little lonely. This is strange. As he muttered to himself, he had already released his perception again. The surrounding canyon was still quiet. Other than the group of spirit beasts from before, no other creatures appeared. Quiet. In this side of the canyon, it was a little strangely quiet. No. Someone has been here. Just as Feng Yu was feeling puzzled, Fatso Lu suddenly spoke in a deep voice. At the same time, he suddenly thought of something and looked at the front of the canyon. An ominous premonition rose in his heart. What happened? Feng Yu was a little speechless by Fatso Lu's startled reaction, so he quickly asked. It's fine. Let's get out of here. Fatso Lu shook his head and did not explain further to Feng Yu. Looking at his expression, Feng Yu also vaguely felt uneasy. Without asking any questions, he followed Fatso Lu to the end of the canyon behind him. However, when Feng Yu released his perception again, several powerful auras had already appeared at the side of the canyon's exit. Their speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, they had already surrounded this side of the canyon. We've been tricked, Fatso Lu roared. At the same time, outside the canyon, those few auras had already locked onto Fatso Lu and Feng Yu in an instant. The auras were very powerful. When they locked onto Feng Yu and Fatso Lu, those few auras had already enveloped Feng Yu's entire body. A moment later, from the entrance of the canyon's periphery, a few figures had already slowly walked in. The person in the lead had an extremely ugly face. Not only was he short, but he also looked sloppy all over. This figure was very familiar to Feng Yu. It was Ding Qi, who had joined forces with the two powerhouses from the Chun family and Shar state to attack the Lu family not long ago. This kid had a grudge against Fatso Lu for killing his wife. That was why he had been so crazy the last time. However, what Feng Yu did not expect was that he had experienced failure once. This time, he actually dared to make a comeback. Moreover, he did it in this Yuan mountain. Damn Fatso, we meet again. In front of him, Ding Qi's short figure had already blocked in front of Fatso Lu. His tone was still as cold as ever. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Feng Yu again and snorted coldly. Last time, you ruined my plans. I didn't expect you to still dare to stay here. This is good. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. I'll take care of you together. People are in high spirits when they encounter happy events. This sentence was perfect to describe Do Dinky. He looked at Feng Yu and Fatso Lu with a smile. Last time at the Lu family, he had spent so much effort. If it weren't for Feng Yu who had appeared halfway, he would have already succeeded. He wouldn't have waited until now. In his heart, he had always hated Feng Yu. He didn't expect to meet him today. Not only was Fatso Lu there, but Feng Yu was also there. In this way, he didn't have to waste time looking for Feng Yu's whereabouts. He snorted coldly and waved his hand behind him. Feng Yu stared at the people in front of him, feeling a little bitter in his heart. The reason why Ding Qi spoke so arrogantly was not because he was arrogant. After his last failure, he had learned his lesson. Therefore, this time, he invited 4 experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm from the Shire state. Although they were expensive, Ding Qi felt that it was worth it. The reason why he spoke so boldly was because of the 4 experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm behind him. Ding Qi smiled sinisterly and looked at Feng Yu. As soon as he looked at him, a strange look appeared in his eyes. Last time, he had gathered the people of the Chun family to attack the Lu family. At that time, Feng Yu had fought, but his cultivation was only at the martial king realm. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but Feng Yu's aura had skyrocketed. This surprised him a little. There was a slight fear in his eyes. After all, last time, when Fang Yu was still at the martial king realm, the strength that he had displayed was already comparable to that of a martial emperor. Now, Fang Yu's aura was so strong. His strength must be even stronger. However, after thinking about it, he felt relieved. No matter how strong Fang Yu was, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. In the face of the suppression of the realm and the suppression of the number of people, all strength was nothing but nothingness. He was very confident that Fatso Lu would not be able to escape from him this time. Of course, there was also Fang Yu, who had ruined his plan. "Idiot Ding, are you done?" When the atmosphere was a little tense, Fatso Lu walked forward slowly and indifferently. His eyes were still full of arrogance. "I was wondering why Mount Yuan was so strange this year. It turns out that you guys did something. So, you killed a lot of spirit beasts along the way, right? Damn Fatso, you talk too much nonsense." Ding Qi shook his head with a smile and said, "So what?" After saying that, he turned around and looked at the four experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm behind him. He felt a little helpless in his heart. Originally, their mission at Mount Yuan was to find Fatso Lu. Chapter 705. As long as they could find traces of Fatso Lu in a Yuan mountain and kill him, they would have completed their mission. However, these experts from Shire State had their eyes on the strength of the spirit beasts in a Yuan mountain. They thought that spirit beasts with such strength would definitely have monster cores in their bodies. Therefore, along the way, they had carried out an inhumane massacre of the spirit beasts in a Yuan mountain. Ding Qi had been worried at first. He was afraid that these guys would cause a commotion in this area and attract Fatso Lu's attention. Fortunately, Fatso Lu had been fooled and had found his way here. "Idiot Ding, tell me, what do you want?" Fatso Lu blinked and said to Ding Qi, curling his lip. There was no fear on his face. However, Fang Yu knew in his heart that Fatso Lu was still quite nervous. "What should I do? How many times have I told you? Of course, I'm going to kill you," Ding Qi said sinisterly. Then, his face turned gloomy. "Last time in your territory, you were lucky enough to keep your dog life. This time, let's see if you'll be so lucky again," he said in a sinister tone, then waved his hand behind him. Four experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm stood in front of Ding Qi in an instant. Their bodies were emitting a violent aura. It seemed that they wanted to kill Fatso Lu on the spot. "Idiot Ding, why aren't you afraid of me?" Fatso Lu shook his head helplessly. Facing four experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm, he did not panic. He still looked calm. He looked at Ding Qi and said, "Last time, I was kind enough to spare your life. I didn't expect that you would dare to make trouble for me again. Don't blame me." Fatso Lu said it casually. It seemed that he did not take these experts seriously at all. Fang Yu was already scared out of his wits. He really did not know where Fatso Lu got such a big heart from. At this time, if Ding Qi was angered and gave the order, these four experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm would follow him. Once they pounced on him, he might not even be able to use the Ba Huang's secret zone. However, he was very confident, as if he could crush Ding Qi to death. Sure enough, when Fatso Lu said this, Ding Qi was so angry that he laughed. His expression of wanting to laugh and cry at the same time was a little strange. He looked into Fatso Lu's eyes and said, "You fatty, where do you get such big words from?" "Tone." Fatso Lu shook his head and said, "My tone isn't as harsh as yours." As the two of them bickered, Fang Yu stood quietly to the side, sizing up the experts from Shire. In his heart, he had already planned his escape route. He wasn't a fool. He was unwilling to fight against four experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm. Furthermore, the four of them had come prepared. Seeing that Fatso Lu was still raging, Fang Yu had already slowly mobilized the spirit energy in his energy reserve. He infused all the spiritual energy into his body at once. The space behind Fang Yu began to distort. Damn fatty, I'm too lazy to talk to you. Go to hell. In terms of words, Ding Qi was already at a disadvantage. He was rendered speechless by Fatso Lu. Therefore, he waved his hand and stood behind the 4 experts at the peak of the martial emperor realm. This aura is so strange. As he gave the order, he couldn't help but frown. His gaze had already turned to Fang Yu. That aura was coming from behind Fang Yu. He was slightly stunned and frowned. He wanted to see the space behind Fang Yu clearly, but he found that the space had suddenly distorted. They want to run. Stop them. Ding Qi's eyes froze for a moment, then he immediately reacted. With a roar, he waved his hand at the 4 experts. Those people didn't just stand there. As the aura around them exploded, one of them suddenly stretched out his fists. His target was Fatso Lu, who was standing in front of Fang Yu. His speed was so fast that it made people click their tongues. With such a violent attack, not to mention Fatso Lu, even Fang Yu didn't dare to take it head-on. He pulled Fatso Lu, who was still in a daze, back and threw him into the Ba Huang's secret territory. And that expert's fist wind had already arrived. Boom! Fang Yu mobilized all the spiritual energy in his body and gathered it on the dragon armor. At the same time, he forcefully blocked the violent attack and borrowed the force to fly back into the 8 desolate mystery land. The entrance slowly closed. Ding Qi's face turned cold. Where are they? Where did they go? He stood where he was, roaring and furious. 2 living people just disappeared into thin air in front of his eyes. While he was extremely shocked, his eyes were also filled with fury. It was such a rare opportunity, yet Fatso Lu still managed to escape. How could he not be angry? Is it a space treasure? That's right. It seems to be a space treasure. That person just now must be a mighty figure. He actually has a space treasure. While Ding Qi stood where he was, roaring and furious, the experts from Shar State were already standing where they were in a daze. They were also shocked. Just now, Fang Yu disappeared into thin air. It was definitely not a trick. He used a space treasure to travel to an independent space. And so far, not many people had this kind of control treasure. Therefore, it would be a lie to say that they weren't shocked. At the same time, above the canyon, 2 figures had been standing there for a long time. They stood where they were in a daze. These 2 were the 4th young master and his master. What did that kid use just now? 4 experts at the peak of the sovereign realm. They actually let that fatso escape. Ding Qi is really a good-for-nothing. No wonder his wife was stolen. So much nonsense. The 4th young master's eyes were gloomy. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Originally, they had witnessed the whole battle and thought that Fatso Lu and Fang Yu would definitely die this time. This was good. It saved them a lot of trouble. Even if Lu Xing wanted to pursue the matter, it had nothing to do with them. Unfortunately, Ding Qi was really a good-for-nothing, and the 4 experts at the peak of the sovereign realm were just SOSO. They actually let Fang Yu escape right under their noses. This is not a space treasure. While the 4th young master was still standing on the side gnashing his teeth, the elder had already spoken slowly. His eyes were deep as he stared at the space where Fang Yu had just disappeared. He murmured, "When they disappeared just now, there was clearly a strange aura floating by. In other words, something more terrifying than a space treasure. This is actually that kid's cultivation method." When he said this, the elder's face was already as cold as iron. Cultivation method? How is that possible? The 4th young master also frowned. His eyes were full of disbelief. Chapter 706. He had heard of independent space condensed by the power of intent and space magic treasures, but he had never heard of any so-called technique that could create an independent space. That's right, it's a technique. The elder slowly retracted his gaze and nodded with certainty. What technique? The fourth young master asked with some doubt. He had never heard of such a powerful technique in this world. With such a technique, wouldn't he be invincible? Just like Feng Yu, if he couldn't beat them, he could escape at any time. I'm not sure either. But the spatial fluctuation just now was condensed by his aura, so there's no mistake about it. Of course, this technique isn't invincible. It needs time to be released. Otherwise, the first young master wouldn't have delayed for so long. If Ding Qi hadn't talked nonsense with the first young master, and if the four experts had all pounced on them, they definitely wouldn't have been a match. The elder muttered with a look of pity in his eyes. Fatso Lu's life was too good. He actually managed to escape this time. Not only that, but he was also interested in Feng Yu. Feng Yu had several peerless elixirs from the moment he appeared. Moreover, the technique he practiced was so profound. For a moment, he was quite interested in the other party and the matters behind him. Boss, what do we do next? In the canyon, several experts from Shire State looked at Ding Qi and asked, What do we do? I'm asking you, what do we do? I paid you to come here, not to watch a show. When they spoke, they happened to touch Ding Qi's bad luck, and he was worried about how to vent his anger. After a round of scolding, they didn't continue to speak. If it were up to me, we'd just wait here. That's right, the disadvantage of this space treasure is that it only has one exit. You still have to come out from where you entered. That's right, I don't believe they'll curl up in there forever. The few of them spoke one after another and didn't notice that Ding Qi's face had turned green. All right, then I'll have to trouble you to wait here. Ding Qi sneered. The cold expression on his face didn't diminish. He wanted nothing more than to tear these people to shreds, but after thinking for a moment, he decided not to do anything. After saying that, he turned around and left the canyon. If they were willing to wait, then let them continue to wait. Ding Qi was not a fool and naturally would not wait here foolishly. It was obviously hopeless to count on these people. Once Fatty Lu came out and the Lu family investigated, Ding Qi wouldn't be able to bear it. The only thing he could do now was to run. When he thought of this, he didn't stay any longer and his figure quickly disappeared. His heart was filled with resentment, but he didn't notice the fourth young master and the elder hiding at the entrance of the canyon. In the Ba Huang's secret area, Fatso Lu was still panting heavily. He looked at Feng Yu with lingering fear. After a while, he wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said, Can you move faster next time? I almost lost my life. The auras of the four experts at the peak of the martial royal realm were extremely violent. It shrouded Fatso Lu's heart and almost took his last breath. Do you think this is eating and drinking? Feng Yu frowned and looked at Fatso Lu unhappily. Every time the Ba Huang's secret area opened, it would consume a lot of spiritual qi. And it would take a certain amount of time. All right, I'm finally alive. Fatso Lu shook his head and smiled bitterly. This Ding Qi is really haunting me. Feng Yu shrugged his shoulders. Master, what should we do next? After all, Fatso Lu was a smart person. His ultimate goal in coming to Mount Yuan this time was to find the bones of the spiritual bird beast. But now, not only did he not find the spiritual bird beast, but he was also trapped in the Ba Huang's secret area. He didn't know when he would be able to get out. While he felt helpless, he also hated Ding Qi. Idiot Ding, when I get out, I'll definitely settle the score with you. Fatso Lu snorted coldly and stopped talking. Feng Yu didn't bother to continue talking to him. Being trapped in the Ba Huang's secret area, he probably couldn't get out for the time being. Outside, there were 4 experts at the peak of the martial royal realm guarding. They probably wouldn't leave in a short time. After thinking for a while, Feng Yu left Fatso Lu where he was. he found a quiet place and began to study the crystal stone store. The crystal stone store had completely changed at this time. In the advanced crystal stone store, not only were the items sold higher in grade, but there were also more types of items. There were many cultivation skills that Fang Yu had never heard of, as well as all kinds of heavenly spiritual treasures. There was a dazzling lineup, and it was extremely tempting. After thinking for a while, Fang Yu looked at the column of weapons. Under this column, a long sword came into Fang Yu's sight. It was a weapon from an unknown period of time. In the weapon, an artifact spirit had been born. Under the introduction in the next column, it was only written, "Left behind by an almighty after his death." In other words, this long sword was actually the weapon of a certain expert. If it could be called an almighty in the system, it must be the existence of the martial sage realm. It was needless to say how powerful the weapon of a martial sage realm expert was. Looking at the material, Fang Yu couldn't tell what it was either. And this long sword, among the weapons in the entire crystal stone store, should be the cheapest one. It only cost 1,000 crystal stones. After thinking for a while, Fang Yu gritted his teeth and exchanged for it. Although 1,000 crystal stones was already very high. However, it was considered the cheapest weapon in the system shop, and it was also the weapon that Fang Yu liked the most. If he wanted to improve his strength, these weapons were indispensable. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Exchange successful. Cost: 1,000 crystal stones. Exchange item: 7 stars fatal sword. The goods have been released. A series of mechanical sounds from the system slowly came into Fang Yu's mind. However, Fang Yu was no longer in the mood to care about the system's prompt. His attention was all on the long sword in his hand that was emitting a cold light. It was unknown how many years had passed since this sword had been here. But there was still a cold light around it. Under the cold light was the sharp blade of the sword. Even after such a long time, the sword still showed no signs of being corroded by the passage of time. Under the sunlight, the entire sword revealed a dazzling cold light. Feeling the bone-chilling coldness in his hand, Fang Yu nodded in satisfaction. Just by looking at the surface of the sword, it was already incomparably sharp. He did not know what material was used to make it. At this time, not only was it not rusty, but it was even sharper. Not only that, there was a strong surging force on the entire sword. This force seemed to have been imprisoned in this sword for a long time, and it looked like it was about to burst out. Feeling this strong desire, Fang Yu held the sword with one hand and waved it with a chilly wind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, a clear and low humming sound of the sword resounded through the sky. Chapter 707. This fatal 7 stars sword was a good sword. The sword intent blasted into the sky, and the sword body buzzed with a low hum. When Fang Yu waved it in his hand, the sword intent buzzed even louder. After a violent force swam around the sword body, it gathered on the sword tip. A cold glint appeared first, and then this power surged out. Boom, 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 a towering tree in the distance was directly cut in half by this sword chi. Wherever the sword chi went, there was a gust of wind. This was just the power of the sword chi. What about the power of the sword body? Fang Yu murmured in his heart, and waved the long sword in his hand again. In an instant, the soaring dragon technique was used. In the next second, he had already appeared in front of a huge rock cliff. The long sword fell with a wave of his hand. Bang! There was no obstruction. The huge rock was directly split into two by the long sword, splitting it into two. The sword body was still extremely sharp, and it was not affected at all. Fang Yu was already a little shocked. This longsword seemed to be many times sharper than Fatso Lu's dagger. There was even an illusion in his heart that if this long sword fell on the body of a spirit beast with rough skin and thick flesh, it would definitely be killed. While Fang Yu was sighing in his heart, the long sword seemed to have slowly released the power that had accumulated for a long time after Fang Yu waved it twice. The strong sword intent began to slowly disappear. In its place, there was a mysterious force. After feeling this mysterious force, Fang Yu directly gathered a force on his fists. This force swam around the sword body, and all gathered on the sword tip. "Come out!" Fang Yu shouted in a low voice. His eyes were already fixed on a faint black shadow on the sword tip. Previously, when he was in the mall, Fang Yu had already noticed that this sword, after being forged by that powerful master, had now condensed a sword spirit. However, the sword spirit had not yet appeared and was still hiding timidly, which made Fang Yu a little confused. Since it did not want to come out by itself, Fang Yu had to ask it to come out. As soon as the low voice fell, the strength of Fang Yu's hands increased a lot. Ouch! After a long while, a slight scream came from the sword tip. Then, the black shadow on the sword tip slowly floated to the ground and condensed into a figure. After the black shadow slowly condensed, Fang Yu's eyes were already on her. It was a woman with a graceful figure. It was unknown how old she was or how old she was. She looked pretty and even a little immature. This made Fang Yu a little suspicious. How could such a terrifying sword spirit condense into such a harmless guy? Why are you so irritable? I was just joking with you. Did you have to attack me with the power of concept? The girl covered her scalp and her face red. It seemed that she had been hurt by Fang Yu. After a while, she reacted. Didn't Lord Immortal die? Didn't I also dead? Why am I still alive? Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Who are you? After muttering to herself, the girl directly attacked Fang Yu 4 times in a row. She looked at the space in front of her, and there was endless doubt in her eyes. 800 years ago, Lord Immortal was attacked. 6 martial emperors joined forces and destroyed the origin of the Lord Immortal's will. Lord Immortal died, and she, with the fall of Lord Immortal, sank into the endless abyss, and then lost consciousness. She waited for 800 years. Now, when she opened her eyes, she saw a different scene and a different person. Her eyes were full of doubt, but there was nothing to say. This will be your new home. As for me, I will be your master from now on. Fang Yu didn't even look at the girl. Instead, he spoke casually. You? The girl blinked, and her face was full of disbelief. You are just a martial emperor, and you want to be my master? Laugh. When the girl covered her mouth and laughed wildly, a force had already entered her body. Fang Yu did not show any mercy, and used 80% of his strength. The girl was sent flying, and after a while, she slowly landed on the ground. Then, she looked at Fang Yu with a pale face. There was some shock in her eyes. Of course, she was not shocked by Fang Yu's strength, but doubted her own strength. Just now, when Fang Yu attacked, she wanted to fight back. However, when she tried to communicate with the spirit Qi, she realized that her current realm was far from what it was before. Back then, her realm was much stronger than a peak martial sage. But now, her strength was only a martial king. She could not even defeat a martial emperor. Don't waste your time. Fang Yu snorted and shook his head. Now, your master is no longer a Lord Immortal. You're no longer that powerful artifact spirit anymore. If it weren't for the fact that you are pitiful, I wouldn't have bothered with you. If you are willing, follow me and I will definitely bring you back to the peak. If you are not willing, it has nothing to do with me where you go. However, don't think that you can stay in this sword. Fang Yu snorted and said without holding back. After saying that, he withdrew the sword. He turned around and left this place. Hey! Wait for me. Master, wait for me. Behind him, a series of anxious cries came from the girl. Fang Yu sneered in his heart. All of this was actually under his control. The girl was just a weapon spirit. If she did not stay in the sword, her strength and cultivation would not improve at all. Moreover, not only would she not improve, her strength would also regress day by day. Her lifespan would not be very long, at most 30 to 50 years. If she stayed in the sword obediently, she might still be able to return to the peak. If she was unwilling, then she could only wait for death. The girl was not a fool, and naturally, she would not choose the second option. She walked into the sword obediently, and there was a bitter look on her face. However, Fang Yu did not care. After all, her former master was in existence in the martial emperor realm. Wherever he went, wasn't he all-powerful and awe-inspiring? Fang Yu was just a mere martial emperor. In her eyes, he was indeed a villain. In fact, he was not even comparable to an ant. Now, she had to lower herself and acknowledge an ant as her master. The difference between them was self-evident. Therefore, Fang Yu did not blame her. "What is your name?" On the way back, Fang Yu asked in a low voice. "Chu Qing, the name given to me by the celestial being." The girl's clear voice slowly sounded. "Zero. From now on, you are called Zero," Fang Yu said in a deep voice. "What?" Chu Qing was obviously a little slow to react. Her words were filled with shock and doubt. "I don't care about your past, and I won't ask about your past. Everything in the past is over." Chapter 708. From now on, since you're following me, you'll have to start from the beginning again. Whether it's the realm or the path in the future. Forget the past, everything starts anew, everything starts from scratch. So, from now on, you'll be called Zero, Fang Yu said slowly. After he finished speaking, he slowly put away the long sword. "But this name is so unpleasant," in the sword, Zero was still struggling, trying to resist. "That's not up to you." Fang Yu snorted coldly and ignored her. The difference between the past and the present was like heaven and earth. Without a long time, she wouldn't be able to digest it. However, Fang Yu wasn't a gentle person. Back at the wooden house, Fatso Lu was whispering something to the little boy. Seeing Fang Yu come back, Fatso Lu's expression changed, and he quickly waved at Fang Yu. "Come here quickly." Fang Yu was a little confused. He couldn't stand Fatso Lu's surprised expression. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's the matter?" "We'll talk about it later." "What's the matter with you?" Fatso Lu frowned, as if there was something difficult lingering in his mind. His gaze was sizing up Fang Yu. Fang Yu was baffled by Fatso Lu's antics. After being puzzled for a while, he heard Fatso Lu slowly say, "Why did your aura become stronger after going out for a while? It's really strange." He was almost muttering this sentence to himself, but it still reached Fang Yu's ears. He had seen people improve their realms very quickly, but he had never seen anyone improve so quickly. It had only been a few hours. Fang Yu left Fatso Lu's sight for less than 6 hours. In such a short period of time, his physical strength had improved so much. That was why Fatso Lu was so surprised. Fang Yu frowned. He mobilized the spiritual energy in his body and circulated it around his body. As expected, he discovered that the strength of his physical body had faintly increased by quite a bit. It had even completely surpassed his current one-star martial emperor realm. This change was truly strange. Even Fang Yu himself did not notice it. If it wasn't for Fatso Lu's reminder, he would still be in the clouds. This time, not only Fatso Lu, but even Fang Yu himself fell into deep thought. How did he become so strong after going out for a while? Just now, he hadn't cultivated for a long time, nor had he exchanged realms from the crystal store, nor had he comprehended the nebula map. After thinking for a while, Fang Yu suddenly came to a realization. That sword, 7 stars suicide sword. It must have something to do with the sword. The sword chi seemed to have merged into Fang Yu's body. Just now, when the sword chi was humming and the sword intent was erupting, a trace of the sword intent would occasionally enter Fang Yu's body. However, Fang Yu didn't care too much about it. However, he never imagined that this seemingly insignificant trace of sword intent would allow his physical strength to improve so quickly. After all, this sword was the weapon of a martial emperor from back then. Following such a powerhouse who was at the peak of his strength all year round would naturally be different. However, this sort of improvement was too sudden and too fast. No wonder Fatso Lu was so confused. "Master, is there any treasure in this independent space of yours?" Fatso Lu frowned and looked at Feng Yu for a long time before speaking slowly. After speaking, he grinned and continued, "Master, if there is such a treasure, can you lend it to me? I'll pay a high price." Fatso Lu was not a fool. He had already planned it out in his heart. Feng Yu had improved so quickly. If he really relied on some treasure, he must buy it with a lot of money. In this way, Fatty Lu's strength would definitely rise, and in time, he would dominate the entire Lu clan. By then, he wouldn't have to be on tenterhooks all day long to guard against his brothers. He wouldn't have to worry about not being able to establish himself in the Lu family without the help of the elders. To forge iron, one had to be strong. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. An old fox was an old fox. Feng Yu muttered in his heart, but he didn't say anything. Feng Yu naturally knew what Fatso Lu was thinking. The reason why Lu Sheng, the head of the Lu family, liked this guy so much was because he was too smart. Moreover, he was not a bad person. However, this time, he was obviously going to be greatly disappointed. Even if he did, Feng Yu would definitely not agree to it no matter how much money he spent. "Cut the crap. What did you want to say just now?" Feng Yu raised his eyebrows and asked directly without giving Fatso Lu a chance to speak. "Don't you want to reconsider? The price is negotiable." Fatso Lu was obviously still unwilling to give up. With a reluctant look on his face, he added another sentence. "You talk too much nonsense." Feng Yu frowned and turned to leave. "Hey, hey, hey!" Fatso Lu only became anxious when he saw that Feng Yu was about to leave. He quickly blocked in front of Feng Yu and said with a smile, "Since there's nothing to talk about, let's talk about business." "What's the matter?" Feng Yu still didn't have a good expression. "Come over here and talk." Fatso Lu waved his hand and sat beside the little boy. Feng Yu was a little confused, but he still walked over slowly. "I was chatting with this little thing just now. Guess what I know?" After Feng Yu walked over, Fatso Lu smiled mysteriously and looked at Feng Yu. "I don't know." Feng Yu shook his head. He really didn't like Fatso Lu's way of keeping him in suspense. He directly said in annoyance, "If you have something to say, say it." "The Heavenly Demon Cult," Fatso Lu said coldly. Feng Yu frowned. He really hadn't heard much about the Heavenly Demon Cult. It's a sect that feeds on the flesh and blood of boys and cultivates forbidden technique. This sect first appeared in the Mirage Sea City. Because their cultivation method is too bloody, this sect became a target of scorn. A dozen years ago, this sect completely disappeared from the Mirage Sea City area. At first, I thought that this sect was completely gone. I didn't expect that they would be hiding deep in the mountains. Fatso Lu was already clenching his fists when he said that. He knew more about this sect, so the hatred in his heart was naturally much stronger than Feng Yu's. "You're saying that those people hiding in the cave are from the Heavenly Demon Cult?" Feng Yu frowned as he listened, having a general idea of what Fatso Lu was saying. Before this, they had only guessed that these people were people who cultivated forbidden technique. They never thought that they were from the Heavenly Demon Cult. And from the looks of it, Fatso Lu had some ties with the Heavenly Demon Cult. Earlier, when Feng Yu wasn't around, Fatso Lu had asked the little boy about the appearance of those people. Fatso Lu recognized them almost as soon as the little boy finished speaking. "That's right. I recognize those guys even in disguise. To be precise, I recognize all of Mirage Sea City." Chapter 709. More than 100 years ago, the Heavenly Demon Cult was still a legitimate sect. At that time, the Heavenly Demon Cult had thousands of disciples, and was not a small sect. At the very least, it was the #1 sect in Mirage City. It was comparable to the Sword Sect and the Chi Sect. However, despite their large number of disciples, they were not very strong. They had always been suppressed by other sections. Even some of the smaller sects could bully them. As a result, the sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Cult could no longer sit still. More and more disciples left to join other sects, which made the sect leader very embarrassed. In his anger, he inadvertently obtained a cultivation technique that had long been listed as taboo in Taowu State. No one knew what the technique was called or what it was about. However, from then on, the sect leader seemed to have changed. Not only did he slaughter people everywhere, but many disciples of other sects also died at his hands. This situation continued for several decades. Eventually, the entire Heavenly Demon Cult left, leaving only the sect leader and a few elders. During that time, the Heavenly Demon Cult finally quieted down. For a long time, no one heard of their name, and no one saw anyone from the Heavenly Demon Cult. Just when everyone thought that the Sky Demon Cult had vanished from that day onwards, finally, one day, a few children in Mirage City mysteriously disappeared. One of the missing children was the young master of the Ding clan, the second most powerful clan in Mirage City. The Ding clan spent a lot of money to search for the young master. Later, after some investigation, they found that the young master had been turned into a skeleton by the sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Cult. His flesh and blood had also been devoured by that person. The head of the Ding clan was furious, and sought out many experts to destroy the Heavenly Demon Cult. Unfortunately, every time, there was simply no need for the sect master to make a move. Those elders would be able to take care of those so-called experts. For a time, Mirage City was in turmoil. Everyone hid the children at home well. From then on, not a single boy could be found on the streets of Mirage City. And the Heavenly Demon Cult seemed to have evaporated from the world, disappearing without a trace. More than 20 years had passed since then. Fatty Lou was one of the children who had been hidden back then. That was why he had a strong impression of the Heavenly Demon Cult. When they were in the forest, he had vaguely suspected it, but he didn't think too much about it. And yet, it was only after the boy's description that Fatso Lou suddenly remembered the existence of the Sky Demon Cult. To think that the Heavenly Demon Cult would still linger and hide deep in the mountains. At first, I thought that they would understand the situation and disappear far away. I didn't expect them to do such a thing in Andy. After Fatso Lou finished speaking, he clenched his fists. His expression turned cold as he spoke in a deep voice. After he finished speaking, a cold, murderous look appeared in his eyes. "You're not going to find trouble with them, are you?" Fong Yu raised his eyebrows and asked. Looking at Fatso Lou's expression, if the people from the Heavenly Demon Cult were in front of him, he might have already rushed up and fought with his life on the line. "I definitely won't let the Heavenly Demon Cult go." Fatso Lou clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he spoke. However, just as he finished speaking, Fong Yu poured a bucket of cold water over his head. "Don't think about the Heavenly Demon Cult for now. We're trapped here now, and there are 4 elites standing guard outside. Whether we can get out or not is another matter, so why would we be in the mood to care about the Heavenly Demon Cult?" Fong Yu muttered. As soon as he finished speaking, Fatso Lou's aura was completely deflated. He couldn't help but look a little disappointed. It was only then that he realized that they were now trapped in the 8 Desolates' secret realm. Forget about finding trouble with the Heavenly Demon Cult. It was already a blessing in disguise that the people outside didn't come looking for trouble with them. Feeling a little bitter inside, Fatso Lou looked at Fong Yu and muttered, "What do we do next?" Fatso Lou regretted it right after he asked. He frowned at Fong Yu's strange look and stammered, "Why, you're not going to make us stay here for the rest of our lives, are you?" By the time he said that, his face was already a pool of stagnant water. The people outside are only here for the money. Do you think they'll guard here for the rest of their lives? Fang Yu looked at Fatso Lu exasperatedly. This guy was usually quite smart, but he would always be muddle-headed at the critical moment. After Fang Yu said that, he didn't say anything else. He looked at the sky outside. 2 days had passed in the 8 Desolates' secret realm. On the outside, it was clear that only a few hours had passed. As such, Fang Yu and the others spent their days in the 8 Desolates' secret realm in torment. On the outside, only a few hours had passed. In terms of cultivation, Fang Yu naturally liked the time in the 8 Desolates' secret realm. However, when it came to running for their lives, it wasn't so wonderful. Fatso Lu was now running around in circles anxiously. However, he didn't have any good ideas at the moment. On the other hand, Fang Yu continued to calm down and began to hold his breath and cultivate with rapt attention. Here, with Fatso Lu around, Fang Yu didn't try to comprehend the mystery of the nebula map. The nebula map was a secret and also Fang Yu's trump card. This kind of thing couldn't be known to outsiders, let alone be disturbed. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be directly pulled into the strange reincarnation force like when he was in the Azure Dragon Academy, unable to extricate himself. Last time, Deputy Dean Wang was there. However, this time, Fatso Lu might not help Fang Yu out. After thinking about it, he still focused and began to stabilize the strength of his physical body. Previously, the sword chi on the long sword had surprised Fang Yu. The benefit of the improvement of the physical strength was that Fang Yu could indulge in the improvement of the realm. He didn't have to worry about the rapid improvement of the realm. He gathered all the spiritual chi in the Dantian Sea of Chi in his body. Slowly, it began to swim. Fang Yu only felt that all the meridians in his body seemed to have been improved. At this moment, he was already extremely powerful. Cece's infinite power was contained in every inch of his skin. For Fang Yu, this was a qualitative improvement. He slowly instilled all the power into every part of his body. Fang Yu tried to use this power to attack his physical body. He felt how much this physical body could withstand at this time. Boom! The spiritual chi in the Dantian Sea of Chi gathered on his fist. After forcefully attacking once, there was a muffled sound. Then, the power instantly dissipated in his body. The peak of the martial emperor realm. Fang Yu was shocked. Now, the strength of this physical body was close to the peak of the martial emperor realm. Chapter 710. Fang Yu had never expected such a change. It was just a wisp of low sword essence. After it gathered in Fang Yu's body, it unexpectedly directly improved Fang Yu's physical strength by a large realm. If it were not for the fact that his realm was not high enough, Fang Yu could even fight with the so-called martial ancestor realm experts with his physical body. However, with the strength of his physical body, Fang Yu could almost do whatever he wanted in the martial emperor realm. There was almost no weapon that could hurt him. What he needed to do now was to improve his realm as well. He needed to improve his realm from the 1-star martial emperor realm to the peak of the martial emperor realm. All that was left was to break through to the martial ancestor realm. After feeling the strength of his physical strength, Fang Yu suddenly had an idea in his mind. He carefully recalled that the old man's physical strength seemed to be a little stronger than this. In other words, the old man's strength was very likely to be around the martial venerable realm. As for what it was specifically, Fang Yu did not know. After all, the old man was very cunning. Under normal circumstances, he would not reveal his true strength at all. After opening the crystal stone store and taking a look, Fang Yu's heart was slowly filled with joy. In the crystal stone store, the realm did not increase by much. After entering the martial emperor realm, it would only cost a mere 5,000 crystals to advance to the next stage. After the 5-star Martial Emperor realm, the following realms would cost 7,000 crystals. These crystals were nothing to Fang Yu at this point in time. After calculating the remaining crystals in his hand and the ones that Fatso Lu had not given to Fang Yu, these crystals added together were enough to exchange for 10 small realms of the Martial Emperor realm. After that, it was the Martial Ancestor realm. Entering the Martial Ancestor realm was entering the realm of the real expert. There was a saying on this continent that was very good. Those below the Martial Ancestor realm were all ant. Fang Yu did not want to be an ant anymore. What's more, Fang Yu now had a place in his heart that he yearned for. That was the place where the old man and the others went, where the origin of heaven and earth was. Over there was a place that truly led to the Transcendence continent. He wondered if the old man and the others had found it. But Fang Yu really wanted to try his luck. But with his current strength, it was simply not enough. It was probably impossible to even enter the depths of Little Sifang. What he had to do right now was to raise his cultivation state continuously. It had been almost a month since the last time he exchanged his realm. During this time, Fang Yu stayed with Fatso Lu. Although the cooldown period for the exchange realm had long passed, he had not found an opportunity to do so. Now was the perfect opportunity. 10,000 crystals were thrown out without blinking. He exchanged for 2 small realms. Ding! Congratulations, host, the exchange is successful. Cost: 10,000 crystals. Exchange item: Martial Emperor's second stage. The system has released the goods. A series of mechanical sounds slowly rang in Fang Yu's ears. As the voice faded away, Fang Yu could clearly feel the changes in his Dantian Qi Sea. His sea of Qi started to boil again. Originally, Fang Yu was about to feel the border. But at this moment, the border began to enlarge infinitely again. It was not only the change in his Dantian Qi Sea. Fang Yu could already clearly feel a powerful aura pouring into his body from all directions. This aura was very familiar. It was the strange aura when one's realm was raised. After this aura continuously flowed into Fang Yu's body, it began to wander wantonly in Fang Yu's body. It stopped on every inch of his skin. However, this aura did not improve Fang Yu's physical strength. Fang Yu knew that because of the sword aura, his physical strength was now at the peak of the Martial Emperor realm. Therefore, the increase in physical strength brought about by the increase in realm this time seemed a little useless. Of course, although his physical body did not improve much. However, under this physical body, Fang Yu's aura and the power of the intent realm were constantly increasing. In just 2 small realms, Fang Yu's aura had increased several times. This aura was the kind of suffocating force that a weak person would feel when facing a strong person. After the power of the intent realm slowly increased, this aura slowly dissipated from Fang Yu's body. After the increase in realm, Fang Yu's essence, qi, and spirit had increased a lot. With just a little force, the towering tree in front of him had been cut in half. After falling to the ground, there was a loud bang. Ding! Congratulations to the host, your realm has increased. Ding! The host's current realm, 3-star Martial Emperor. Reward for leveling up, none. A series of mechanical sounds from the system sounded in Fang Yu's head again. However, Fang Yu did seem a little disappointed. He originally thought that the system would reward him with every increase in realm. But this time, there was no reward. After thinking about it, he thought that it might be because the speed of the increase in realm was too fast. He looked at the system store and saw that the realm exchange had entered the cooldown period again. It was also the Martial Emperor realm, but the cooldown period was not extended. It was still 10 days. As for Fang Yu, he still had 60,000 crystals left. After thinking about it, he forcibly withdrew his gaze from the system store. After all, the temptation of these goods was too strong. Just as Fang Yu withdrew his gaze, a low murmur suddenly sounded in his ears. The voice was clear and sounded very familiar. Behind him, a black shadow was slowly condensing on the 7 stars' fatal sword. Zero was already standing in front of Feng Yu. There was a look of disbelief in her eyes. What did you just do? Why did you increase by 2 realms? Even the celestial immortals have never. Zero raised her eyebrows slightly, her face full of doubts. When she followed the previous celestial immortal master, she had seen many people increase their realms. But she had never seen someone like Feng Yu increase his realm by 2 small realms in such a short time. Nothing, Feng Yu shook his head and smiled. You will know in the future. After saying that, he no longer paid any attention to Zero. Although Zero was confused, he was smart enough to understand the situation. She looked at Feng Yu and found him to be very mysterious. Thinking about it, his strength shouldn't be too weak. Otherwise, he would not have woken her up from her deep sleep. She could not figure out the reason, so she went back into the sword again. Long Xiantian had been in a deep sleep recently, so she did not notice what was going on outside. Feng Yu originally wanted to wake her up, but he decided against it after thinking about it. This was because Feng Yu had sensed something unusual at the entrance of the 8 desolate mystery land. He slowly released the wooden butterfly puppet from the 8 desolate mystery land. Feng Yu finally saw that there were many people outside the 8 desolate mystery land. Chapter 7:11. These few people were at daggers drawn and bows bent at this time, currently confronting each other. Especially the leader, who had a cold look on his face. Feng Yu recognized these people. They were Fatso Lu's younger brothers and the elders who were guarding behind them. These people were all from the Lu clan. To Feng Yu's surprise, Fatso Lu's unlucky 4th brother was also there. The elders behind him appeared together with him. At this moment, the 3rd young master and the 6th young master had already surrounded the 4 martial royal realm powerhouses outside the 8 desolate mystery area with 2 elders. The 3 elders behind the 3 of them had cold looks on their faces. The elder behind the 4th young master, in particular, had a gloomy look on his face. At this moment, the 4th young master was standing in front of them. His face was gloomy as he stared coldly at the 4 martial royal realm powerhouses. He said coldly, "Tell me, where did you hide my big brother? Our Lu clan did not offend any of you during the trial on Mount Yuan. But you guys surrounded my big brother, and now his whereabouts are unknown. Don't tell me you don't care about our Lu clan at all?" When the 4th young master spoke, a cold look flashed in his eyes. It seemed that he was not angry because these guys had attacked Fatso Lu. From the looks of it, he seemed to be blaming these fellows for being such useless trash. However, his tone was more or less imposing. "They must have killed my big brother. Stop talking nonsense with them and just attack." The 3rd young master did not look very good at this moment. He snorted and took a step forward. It was obvious that the 3rd young master was sincerely concerned about Fatso Lu's safety. There was even a hint of worry in his eyes. Feng Yu had already observed earlier that among Fatso Lu's brothers, other than the 3rd young master and the 6th young master, there were not many who would go against him. The 2nd young master and the 7th young master were fine. They looked like they did not care about worldly affairs. However, the rest of them were not on good terms with Fatso Lu. Especially this 4th young master. He even wanted to make a move on Fatso Lu. Feng Yu just couldn't figure out what he was afraid of. However, one day, he would still make a move against Fatso Lu. The Lu clan has never suffered such humiliation before. "Tell me, what did you do to the eldest young master?" After all, the elders behind the 3rd young master were also on Fatso Lu's side. He looked at the 4 martial monarchs and asked in a cold tone. His face was filled with worry. "We really don't know." This time, it was the 4 powerhouses' turn to be dumbfounded. When Ding Qi called them over, he didn't mention Fatso Lu's identity. Originally, He thought that dealing with a mere martial king was not worth mentioning at all. He did not expect that he would be surrounded. These few elders were all stronger than them. Moreover, there was also the fourth young master, who was not weak at all. At that moment there was some fear in his heart, but in the face of the questioning, he couldn't help but reveal a troubled expression. Just as he was about to succeed, Fatso Lu and Fong Yu mysteriously disappeared. Until now, there was still no sign of him. "I think you won't shed tears until you see the coffin?" The third young master snorted coldly. With the elders behind him, he was naturally not afraid. The aura around him erupted, and he directly punched at the martial monarch closest to him. That person's reaction was not slow. After all, the third young master was only a martial king. He didn't dodge at all. The aura around him erupted, but he didn't dare to fight back. Boom! There was a dull bang, and that guy took the third young master's punch head-on. Everyone, calm down!" Seeing that the situation was very likely to go out of control once the third young master made a move, the powerhouses standing behind him couldn't help but ask. As they hurried to help, they said with a bitter expression, "In all honesty, we definitely didn't do anything to that young master. What's more, we were entrusted by someone, and we haven't received the money yet. How could we kill him?" "Oh!" Hearing this, the third young master directly waved his hand, signaling the elders to stay put. Frowning, he looked at them and asked, "Who hired you?" "It's the young master of the Ding family from the Mirage Sea City. That person didn't tell us his name, but he's very ugly and short. At first, we thought he was bluffing, but we didn't expect him to give us hundreds of crystals. That's why we came." The few of them murmured. After that, they looked at the third young master with pleading eyes. "We didn't even hurt a single hair on him. Please let us go." "Really?" The third young master was a soft-hearted person. Seeing that they kept pleading, he hesitated for a moment and was stunned. He turned around and glanced at the elder. The elder didn't say anything, which was a tacit agreement. "All right then. Get out of here, as far as you can." The third young master snorted coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, Fatty Lu, the unlucky fourth brother, waved his hand and directly blocked in front of them. "You want to leave? It's not that easy." His face turned cold, and a burst of aura erupted from his body. "Don't do it." Just as he was about to make a move, the elder behind him stopped him and gave him a look. This, the fourth young master's expression, was slightly startled. However, after seeing the expression on the elder's face, he thought about it and gave up. "Thank you very much." The four powerhouses from Shire hurriedly thanked them. Their figures flashed, and they disappeared into the depths of the forest. "I let them go just like that. What a pity." After a long while, the space in front of everyone began to distort. Fatso Lu slowly walked out of the space as he muttered to himself, "Big brother!" The third young master's face was filled with joy, and he hurriedly went up to him. "Those people didn't do anything to you, did they?" The sixth young master also asked. Only the fourth young master stood at the side, and his eyes revealed a lot of pity and coldness. Fong Yu saw it clearly. This guy seemed to be a little unwilling to accept that Fatty Lu was still alive. These people were found by Ding Qi of the Ding family, right? The third young master sized up Fatty Lu and asked slowly. "That's right." Fatso Lu nodded. "That idiot Ding is really getting more and more outrageous. This time when we go out we must teach him a good lesson." As Fatso Lu spoke, his gaze also sized up the few of them. When he withdrew his gaze, he couldn't help but frown. Why are you all empty-handed?" These words immediately caused the few of them to react. They turned to look at Fatty Lu, and his hands were also empty. "Strange, why can't we find any trace of the spirit birds in Mount Yuan?" The third young master muttered in a low voice. On the other side of the swamp, where the spirit birds lived, there were no traces of any spirit birds. Chapter 7:12. Thus, the four of them turned their gazes to the ravine. It was said that aside from the swamp, the flock of spirit birds might also be resting in the canyon. However, when they arrived, not only did they not find any trace of the spirit birds, they even saw the four champions from Shire. From their mouths, he also learned that the purpose of their trip was to deal with Fatso Lu. Now that the four champions from Shire had left, Fatso Lu's crisis was averted. However, they were no longer the most important thing now. Almost a month had passed since the trial. In a month's time, so many of them had searched the entire Yuan Mountains, but they could not find any trace of the spirit birds. Could it be that the spirit birds had vanished from the face of the earth? That was impossible. When they came to the Yuan Mountains for the trial last year, they could still see flocks of spirit birds as long as they found the right place. In the short span of a year, if no one had interfered, it would be impossible. At that thought, Fatso Lu suddenly slapped his forehead as if remembering something. He looked at Fang Yu and said, "Do you remember what the boy said?" Fang Yu frowned. He was baffled by Fatso Lu's startled reaction. The cave that the little boy was talking about. Fatso Lu reminded him. "You mean, that's right. Didn't the boy say that there were many birds in the cave besides that weirdo and a few others? Aren't those birds the spirit birds? Why would the spirit birds go there?" Fang Yu frowned, unable to make sense of it. Logically speaking, just based on the little boy's description, the inside of the cave must have been filled with blood. Although the spirit birds were aggressive, they definitely did not like the smell of blood. Unable to make sense of it, Third Young Master and the others were still confused when they saw Fatso Lu's expression of sudden realization. "You're saying that the spirit birds are in the cave?" That's right. It's not a normal cave." Fatso Lu took a long time to slowly explain. After a long while, they slowly nodded. "I didn't expect the heavenly demon cult to still be around," Third Young Master frowned. He thought for a moment and said, "Why don't we go and take a look?" "No." This sentence was said by several elders behind him at the same time. He looked a little embarrassed. However, he still explained, "That is an independent space. Anyone who enters it will be suppressed. Furthermore, once one entered, there was absolutely no chance of coming out. The degree of danger could be imagined." After giving it some thought, they gave up on the idea of exploring the cave. "How about this? Let's go back first. Let's report this matter to the Patriarch first, and then we'll make further plans. As for the spiritual bird beast, it seems that it is no longer in this space. There is no need to waste time." The one who spoke was the elder behind the Third Young Master. This fellow looked rather boorish, but his mind was quite meticulous. His words received everyone's approval. Especially Fang Yu. "Fatty, although we didn't find any traces of the spirit bird beast, I still accompanied you. That crystal— Don't worry, Master. I won't forget you." Fatso Lu chuckled as he looked at Fang Yu. Compared to that little bit of crystal, of course his life was more important. After all, Fang Yu had saved his life in this canyon. No matter what, he could not let Fang Yu down. The journey back was much smoother. In just 5 days, they had already returned to the depths of the forest. On the way back, the journey was still quiet. Fang Yu released his aura more than once to sense the situation around him, but the result was the same every time. There were no longer any spirit beasts here. He did not know if it was the doing of the 4 powerhouses from Shire, or if it had something to do with the Sky Demon cult. He returned to the portal. It took almost no effort. After he walked into the portal, the power of the portal was already slowly activated. It had to be said that the Lu family's portal was not bad. Even after such a long time, the power inside showed no signs of diminishing. It was as steady as ever, without any ripples. This shocked Fang Yu a little. However, he quickly regained his composure. After all, there was no treasure in the Lu family that they could not take out. After the space shook slightly, Fang Yu's eyes flashed, and he appeared in the Lu family's plaza. After coming back to his senses, Fang Yu noticed that what supported the portal was a very inconspicuous black box. In the black box there was a treasure similar to a spirit bead. To be able to support such a stable portal for such a long time, it must be the work of that bead. Don't look at it. This is my father's family treasure. Fatso Lu shook his head and said, if I can become the patriarch in the future, I don't mind giving this bead to you. When he said this, he smiled slightly. Fang Yu had already seen an unusual color in his eyes. This guy was actually still scheming, trying to make Fang Yu stay and help him successfully become the patriarch of the Lu family. However, a mere bead was not enough to catch Fang Yu's eye. After all, in the crystal store there were many things similar to this kind of space treasure. Shaking his head, Fang Yu did not say anything. The Lu family's lobby was already full of people at this time. It seemed that the remaining people had already returned in advance. Seeing that the hands of Fatso Lu and the others were still empty, they could not help but look at each other. Big brother, why did you come back empty-handed? They looked at Fatso Lu and asked. Fatso Lu smiled bitterly and did not say anything. Looking at Lu Xing, just as he was about to say something, Lu Xing had already waved his hand. I already know about the matter of Mount Yuan this time. Let's talk about this matter later. You guys go and rest first. After saying that, he did not continue to speak. Fatso Lu was also tactful. He nodded and directly walked out of the lobby. Fang Yu originally wanted to follow Fatso Lu. However, after thinking about it, he did not have the time to refine the peerless grade pills for the time being. Later, the Lu family would very likely have a life and death contest with the Ding family. Fang Yu was not in the mood to be involved in their struggle. After thinking about it, he said goodbye to Fatso Lu and planned to return to the Heavenly Secrets courtyard for a while. After all, the Lu family was a place of trouble. If he stayed for too long, it was inevitable that he would get into trouble. Fatso Lu frowned. He originally wanted to say something. However, seeing that Fang Yu had already made up his mind to leave, he thought about it and did not say anything. Master, in the future, if you have any peerless grade pills, remember to look for me. Fatso Lu did not say anything more and smiled slightly. I hope so. Fang Yu did not say anything more. Chapter 7:13. On the surface, the Lu family did not seem to have any problems. But in reality, it was already a mess. Not to mention the internal strife, it was only a matter of time before it broke out. And now, they were going to confront the Ding family. As Fang Yu muttered to himself, he had already walked out of the Fantasy Sea City. After retracting his senses, Fang Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, in the Fantasy Sea City, there were a few auras that had locked onto his position. These auras were very powerful. He did not know where they came from, but Fang Yu knew that these auras did not have any good intentions. He quickened his pace. After leaving the Fantasy Sea City, these auras slowly disappeared. It seemed that they did not dare to chase him out of the Fantasy Sea City. Behind him, the faint voice of an old man could be heard. Kid, how dare you make an enemy of the Ding family? If you have the guts, don't ever come to our Fantasy Sea City. Otherwise, I'll take your life. After the voice fell, the aura behind him had completely disappeared. At that moment, Fang Yu still had some lingering fear. After all, the Ding family's status in the Fantasy Sea City was not low. If they wanted to besiege Fang Yu, it would be easy. Fortunately, Fang Yu's speed was very fast. Before they could react, he had already left the Fantasy Sea City. The outside world had already calmed down. However, Fang Yu was still somewhat shocked. Looking at the Ding family, it seemed that they were going to make an enemy of the Lu family. The guy who spoke just now was at least a martial ancestor realm expert. In the face of such an expert, Fang Yu was not very confident. The Ding family was too shameless. They knew that a disaster was imminent, so they took the initiative to gain the upper hand. In this way, they would definitely take action against the Liu family. In the future, he could not come to the Fantasy Sea City so easily. At least, before the Liu family destroyed the Ding family. He smiled in his heart and quickened his pace in the direction of the heavenly secret courtyard. It had been a while since he left the heavenly secret courtyard. He wondered if the old man had returned from Little Sifong. But now, that was where Fong Yu belonged. In half a month's time, Fong Yu had already appeared in the space outside the Tianji courtyard. However, this time, the mountain range where the Fecta was located was no longer as quiet as before. The entrance of the Tianji courtyard was already surrounded by a group of people. These figures were very familiar to Fong Yu. In front of the entrance, Blue Knight was alone, facing the dense crowd. The crowd surrounded Blue Knight. Clearly, Blue Knight didn't know what had happened. She looked coldly at the people in front of her, and there was anger on her face. What is the meaning of this? Don't you know the consequences of trespassing into my heavenly secrets courtyard? Blue Knight's face was red as he looked at the figure in front of him. He said righteously, "Our heaven's secrets courtyard has never had anything to do with any of your sections. Even during the sect meetings, we never say anything. This is already the territory of our divination hall. Don't you think that it's inappropriate for you to barge in without informing us beforehand? If Master comes, he definitely won't let you off." Then, she added, "If you know what's good for you, hurry up and leave this place. I'll treat it as if this never happened. Naturally, I won't tell Master. Of course, if you don't leave, I'll take it that you want to break off relations with the Tianji courtyard." Blue Knight shouted righteously, and there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on her face. However, the elders who were confronting her were already somewhat embarrassed. They were rendered speechless by this little girl's rebuke. They were silent for a long time, but they couldn't say anything. Fong Yu stood at the back, unmoved. He frowned but didn't say anything. Firstly, he wanted to see why this group of people had come. Secondly, Senior Sister Blue Knight's aura was too imposing. She was just a woman, but she was able to intimidate so many people the moment she spoke. "Miss, we have no intention of becoming enemies with your Tianji courtyard. However, after so many years, we have no intention of going against your Tianji courtyard. And yet, the sect lord of your Tianji courtyard has always opposed us. Originally, our sect lord could have chosen to swallow his anger. But now, the quintessence of heaven and earth in Little Four Corner is acting strangely, and the sect lord and the others have all gone there. Now, they no longer have the final say in this place. Therefore, it's time for us to settle our old grudges. Of course, your master, Senior Wine Immortal, has always been somewhat accommodating. He only does odd jobs and won't hurt anyone. Of course, we'll follow the rules. We'll just smash your Tianji courtyard. As long as you don't stop us, we won't hurt you." The person who spoke was none other than a middle-aged man. Even if Fong Yu were reduced to ashes, he would still remember this man. He was a master of energy. Earlier, he had led Fong Yu to smash the intestines of a master of energy. At that time, it was this elder who had led Fong Yu into the master of energy. Back then, he hadn't been like this. Although his heart was filled with resentment, he still spoke respectfully. Who could have guessed that his true colors would be revealed now? Earlier, the inner sect disciples had only come to the Azure Dragon Institute to cause trouble. Who could have guessed that they would come to the Tianji courtyard now? From the look of it, they were certain that the old man wouldn't be back for a while. Furthermore, the sect lord was no longer around, so it was only natural that the elders would take advantage of this opportunity to vent their anger. It wasn't just the masters of energy. Even the elders from the Sword sect and other sects had come. As expected, now that the sect lord wasn't around, they didn't have anything to fear. Now, they had come to the Tianji courtyard to vent their anger. It had to be said that these people were sinister and cunning. When the old man was around, they wouldn't have dared to act so rashly. Now that the elders had come to the Tianji courtyard, they had brought inner sect disciples with them. From the look of it, they weren't going to let the matter rest. Blue Knight was well aware of the old man's usual style. When she heard the news from these people, her face was still a little shocked. Although she knew that the old man liked to cause trouble, she had never imagined that he would offend so many sects, and even cause their headquarters to be completely destroyed. Although she was shocked, her expression was unsightly. It was only natural that they would come to the Tianji courtyard for revenge. Of course, the Tianji courtyard was where she lived. After all these years, she had long since developed feelings for it. How could she just stand by and watch the Tianji courtyard be destroyed? After thinking for a moment, she gritted her teeth and said, "Seniors, Master's style is problematic. I apologize to you on their behalf. If you don't think it's enough, you can come at me. However, the Tianji courtyard is where I live. I won't let you destroy it." Chapter 7:14. As he spoke, a powerful aura exploded from Blue Knight's body. Even in the face of the alliance of so many sects, her face remained calm and collected. She refused to believe that the Heaven's Chance Institute, which no one dared to provoke, would be destroyed. Although she was angry, it wasn't because she hated the old man. Rather, it was because of the sect elders. Instead of taking revenge, they resorted to such despicable methods, taking advantage of the old man's absence to attack. Blue Knight supported the Heaven's Chance Institute. Fang Yu watched Blue Knight's every move from a short distance away, and he felt a little touched. Truth be told, if it were Fang Yu, he would have backed away without hesitation. It wasn't because he was afraid of the sect elders. In the past, when Fang Yu had first come out of the 100-man battle, their energy had been enough to scare him. But now, things had changed. Fang Yu was no longer the Fang Yu of the past. He was no longer as weak as before. The reason he had backed down wasn't because he was afraid. It was because the old man deserved it. Of course, he had only gone to cause trouble because of his master's death. But now that he had offended so many sects, it was inevitable that they would come looking for trouble. Furthermore, with so many powerful experts joining forces, even if he didn't fear them, it wouldn't be easy for him to fight them head-on. As for the Masters of Energy and Master of Sword experts, they were all glaring at Blue Knight. "So you're saying you want to throw your life away?" Their voices were very low and deep. Their words were filled with threatening intent. That was especially true of the Master of Energy Elder, who held the deepest grudge against the old man. As of this moment, he was bursting with a violent aura. From the look of it, he would attack Blue Knight at any moment. Attack! In the next second, he spoke in a deep voice. Behind him, the Master of Energy Inner Sect disciples sprang into action. They surrounded Blue Knight, their auras undiminished. Although Blue Knight was already a martial emperor, she was still surrounded by so many Masters of Energy, which meant that it would be very difficult for her to escape. Several auras exploded out, and in the blink of an eye, they were right in front of Blue Knight. Blue Knight's heart tightened. He was already prepared to fight with his life on the line. "Stop!" Just as their fists were about to reach Blue Knight, Fang Yu spoke calmly. When his voice slowly drifted into everyone's ears, Fang Yu's body had already erupted with a majestic aura. This aura directly enveloped everyone. Then, Fang Yu walked out casually. He walked around the crowd and stood in front of Blue Knight. "What's wrong? Do you want to die too?" The elders of the Sword sect naturally recognized Fang Yu. He had already taken a fancy to Fang Yu's aptitude when the 100-person battle had ended. However, in the face of the old man's prestige, he could only choose to give up. Now that he saw Fang Yu as his enemy, he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The thought of roping him in had already vanished. "Brat, you came at the right time. I was just worried that I wouldn't have a chance to teach you a lesson." The Master of Energy Elder's face darkened, and he gave a cold snort. Back then, when the old man came to his door and brought Fang Yu along to cause trouble, he already hated the old man to the bone. As for Fang Yu, he was naturally among them. He had been looking for an opportunity to teach Fang Yu a lesson. Who would have thought that Fang Yu would come knocking on his door? His purpose in coming to the Heaven's Chance courtyard wasn't just to run errands, but also to settle accounts with Fang Yu. The inner sect disciples he had sent out last time had all disappeared without a trace. Presumably, they had all been killed by Fang Yu. This was the perfect time for revenge. "You two can die together," he roared angrily as a cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Wait." Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Fang Yu frowned and interrupted him. "I'm not here to make you my enemy." Fang Yu shook his head and chuckled. "I'm just here to persuade my silly senior sister. After all, there are so many of you. It's not wise for her to foolishly make you her enemy." Fang Yu chuckled as he stood in front of Blue Knight. Fang Yu's words shocked the elders. They had thought that Fang Yu was a tough person. Who would have thought that he was actually a coward? From his words, it seemed that he didn't intend to resist. Not only was he not going to resist, he was going to take away his senior sister, who had sworn to protect the Heaven's Chance courtyard. From the looks of it, this brat was quite sensible. It would save them a lot of trouble. They could vent their hatred without hurting anyone. Then, even if the old man returned from the essence of heaven and earth, he wouldn't pursue the matter. They couldn't help but be secretly delighted. Blue Knight wasn't too willing. "Fang Yu, what's the meaning of this?" She frowned and rolled her eyes at Fang Yu. "I really misjudged you. I never would have guessed that you were this kind of person. I can't believe that Master took you in as a legacy disciple." Her voice wasn't loud, but her tone was clearly reproachful. Her favorable impression of Fang Yu instantly plummeted. "Ha ha. Young miss, your junior brother is the sensible one. If I were you, I'd be like him. A wise man submits to circumstances. After all, this is your master's fault. You shouldn't have to bear the consequences." The elder from the sword sect chuckled as he looked at Fang Yu. There was already quite a bit of joy in his eyes. Only the Master of Energy Elder had a gloomy expression on his face. Normally speaking, this would have been the perfect opportunity to make a move on Fang Yu. Furthermore, with so many sects involved, even if Fang Yu died, they wouldn't be able to find out who did it, and the Master of Energy wouldn't be blamed. But now that Fang Yu had done this, he had no reason to make a move on Fang Yu. Although he was furious, there was nothing he could say. After all, Fang Yu was a clever person. Since that's the case, then hurry up and get out of the way. We've destroyed the Heaven Chance courtyard, so we'll naturally leave. The sword sect's elder chuckled as he looked at Fang Yu. Fang Yu didn't even think about it. Nodding, he looked back at Blue Knight and said, "Elder sister, hurry up and leave." "Bah!" Blue Knight pouted coquettishly. Glaring at Fang Yu, she said, "If you want to leave, then leave. I'm not a coward." With that, her expression flickered, and she grew even more determined. Since this young miss doesn't know what's good for her. The sword sect elder snorted coldly, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Before he could finish speaking, Fang Yu coldly interrupted him. "Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame me for what happens next." These words were directed at Blue Knight. Chapter 7:15. Fang Yu's tone was cold. It entered everyone's ears. Especially the last sentence. His cold expression became even more obvious. He looked at Blue Knight coldly. No one expected that Fang Yu would treat his senior sister with such an attitude, and from the looks of it, he seemed to have the intention to attack. What do you mean? Blue Knight was also confused by Fang Yu's reaction. Originally, she thought that Fang Yu was just a coward. However, after seeing Fang Yu's expression, she was surprised. It was fine if he was cowardly, but there was no need for him to change sides at the last minute and target his own people, right? While she was shocked, Fang Yu's body had already exploded with a violent aura. Blue Knight was completely stunned. She stood there in a daze, completely dumbfounded. Was Fang Yu planning to make a move against her? As this thought flashed through her mind, Fang Yu's aura had already exploded to the extreme. In the next second, he attacked with lightning speed. A gust of wind from his palm struck Blue Knight's body. Blue Knight never dreamed that Fang Yu would actually attack her. At such a close distance, plus she was completely unprepared. It was too late to dodge this palm. Bam! The gust of wind from the palm struck her body. She had already closed her eyes, and her body was sent flying by the gust of wind from the palm. However, just as she closed her eyes and waited for death, she realized that her body was floating in the air and had already flown far away. However, Fang Yu's palm strike did not injure her in the slightest. Although that palm was extremely violent, it was soft and powerful. This gust of wind from the palm was not attacking her. Instead, run. At the same time, Fang Yu's low voice sounded in her ears. As for the elders from the Sword Division and the Master of Energy Division, they were all standing there in stunned silence. They never thought that Fang Yu would actually attack Blue Knight. When she came to her senses, she realized that Fang Yu did not want to hurt her, but save her. In that case, Fang Yu's surrender on the surface was obviously fake. What do you mean? Brat, do you want to become enemies with us? What's the matter? Do you think that you alone can stop so many experts from our sex? Let's see if you can save yourself, if you can save her. A few of them snorted and looked at him coldly. Fang Yu was still standing in the same spot calmly, without any change in his expression. From the moment he came out, he had already made his decision. He swore to protect the Heavenly Secrets courtyard. Of course, he did not do this for the old man. It was more or less because of Blue Knight. If he did not make a move, Blue Knight, her feelings for the Heavenly Secrets courtyard was not ordinary people could not compare. As for Fang Yu, he didn't have any feelings for her. However, the Heavenly Secrets courtyard could be considered as belonging to him. Like Blue Knight, he could not watch the Heavenly Secrets courtyard be destroyed. By doing so, he could protect the Heavenly Secrets courtyard and prevent Blue Knight from being injured. For this battle, Fang Yu was already prepared to fight with his life on the line. Unlike before, the 8 Desolate Secret Mirror was useless now. Once Fang Yu hid in the 8 Desolate Secret Mirror, the Heavenly Secrets courtyard would not be able to avoid a rain of blood. He could only fight. Furthermore, it was a fight to the death. Come, if you want to destroy the Heavenly Secrets courtyard, you'll have to step over my dead body. Fang Yu said in a deep voice, his aura exploding. Since you want to die, don't blame us. Go. Kill him, don't waste time. The Master of Energy elders were overjoyed. Afraid that Fang Yu would go back on his word, they quickly retreated and ordered the inner sect disciples behind them. These people were all peak martial kings. A few of them were martial emperors. They were all elite disciples of the Master of Energy. They were very strong. Their first move was a powerful killing move. Feeling the surging killing intent, Fang Yu slowly unsheathed the 7 Stars Fatality sword from behind his back. Zing, 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 the 7 Stars Fatality sword danced in the wind, and the sword will rumbled, surging with battle intent. A surging berserk aura swept out. The sharp blade was covered with specks of cold light. Under the cold light, it emitted an aura of death. The 7 Stars Fatality sword had not fought for a long time. It had obviously been waiting for this battle for a long time. Like a wild horse free of its reins, a surging power instantly surged out. The sword will surge to the peak. In front of him, a few Master of Energy disciples rushed over. Sensing the powerful sword will in Feng Yu's hand, they could not help but frown. Everyone was stunned on the spot. The terrifying aura that the sword was emitting right now was definitely far beyond that of Feng Yu's aura. It was almost as if a peak martial emperor were standing there, and its aura alone was enough to frighten quite a few people. To them, the sword was like a murderous Buddha from hell, standing there coldly, striking fear into their hearts. What sword is that? What a powerful killing intent! It's terrifying. The few of them murmured in a low voice. The aura that erupted from the sword will directly shook everyone's heart. What are you spacing out for? Charge! Kill him! Of course, the Master of Energy elders didn't notice anything strange about the sword. Their eyes were filled with hatred for Feng Yu. Killing intent welled up in their hearts, and they wished they could personally charge forward and kill Feng Yu. Charge! There's so many of us. What's there to be afraid of? After a long moment of silence, they finally came to their senses. The aura of the sword in front of them was incomparably terrifying. But this time, there were more than 20 of them. No matter how strong he was, under the suppression of absolute numbers, Feng Yu was nothing more than a ghost under their blades. Ryuumumble! They unleashed a barrage of fist winds, causing rumbling sounds to ring out. Surging auras began to build up in midair. Before they could even reach Feng Yu, they were already aiming for Feng Yu's throat. Ryuumble! At the same time, Feng Yu wasn't just standing there like an idiot. He brandished the sword in his hand. Sword energy filled the air. The sound of it piercing through the air could be heard. It was a simple sweep of the sword, and yet it was filled with such explosive power that it was difficult to breathe. Bam! In the face of this explosive power, the fist winds unleashed by the Master of Energy were like ants, and were instantly shredded to pieces. The shockwaves spread out into the surrounding forest, causing yellow leaves to scatter everywhere. Die! At the same time, the swords of the Master of Energy disciples were right in front of Feng Yu's forehead. The cold light gradually grew larger in Feng Yu's eyes, approaching closer and closer. Just as the tip of the sword was about to reach Feng Yu's eyes, Feng Yu had already made his move. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.